Chapter 2909. Sigh, that's true. Fairy Hong Xia also frowned. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. Ziming's actions will sooner or later reach Hutz's stronghold. Darling Xiao, since you've thought of it, why didn't you tell Ziming earlier? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Didn't I just think of it? I was just about to tell her when she left in a hurry. Perhaps she already knows? Fairy Hong Xia sighed. That should be the case. Ziming is very sensitive to such matters. Since you and I have thought of it, she must have understood as well. You and I don't have to worry too much. She should be able to protect herself. Let's hope so. The two of them transmitted their voices to each other as they slowly walked to the main hall where they were resting. After the guards had left, Xiaohua told Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao about his guess. The two of them were anxious when they heard it, but their thoughts were similar to Fairy Hong Xia's. This Hutu stronghold was a place where millions of descendants of the great god Hutu of Meng Mountain gathered. The mysteries within it were not something cultivators like them could fathom. Even if Xiaohua wanted to send a letter to Ziming, it would not be easy. He might even alert the enemy. Naturally, Xiaohua was not at ease with the three of them going somewhere else to meditate. Thus, he set up the capital star formation in the main hall where he meditated and the four of them rested. Seeing Fairy Hong Xia and the other two closing their eyes and meditating, Xiaohua smiled and took out the storage pouch that Elder Jilan had given him. In fact, he was itching to see what was inside the pouch when he was in the main hall. However, he held back. Now that he had the time, he naturally wanted to take a look. Hiss, when Xiaohua's divine sense swept across the storage pouch, a look of surprise appeared on his face. The storage pouch was not big and looked very small. It was almost the same size as the low-grade storage pouch that Xiaohua had exchanged for 90 low-grade spirit stones. However, when Xiaohua saw what was inside, he knew that he was wrong. Furthermore, he could already imagine how many materials Elder Jilan had spent his entire life searching for. However, he still thought too little. Inside this small storage pouch, there were many different materials. These materials were of different shapes and colors, but without exception, they were all huge. Among these materials, there were some strange huge stone pillars. These stone pillars were iron gray in color and had thumb-sized lumps on them, giving them a heavy feeling. Some of them were huge square blocks. These square blocks were greenish-red in color, and there were some flame-like patterns on the surface. The patterns were dotted with star-shaped patterns, and they looked like little galaxies. There were also a lot of large, silvery white, irregular materials. These materials seemed to be broken into several pieces. There were some sawtooth-like cracks and some thick lines. There were also some oval-shaped, earthy yellow in color. The surface of these materials was smooth, without any bumps or bumps. Of course, other than these different materials, there were also many strange magic weapons stacked in a corner of the storage bag. What materials are these materials? Xiaohua was overjoyed, but at the same time, he was dumbfounded. He took out the bone and inspected it with his soul sense. Then he nodded his head inwardly. This green and red color is called flame refinement. The silver color is called 10,000 rolls of snow, and the yellow color is called fire refinement. They are all extremely heavy materials that contain the 5 elements and are unique to these millions of Meng mountains. Sai, these are the materials that Elder Jilan spent his entire life searching for. After a brief inspection, Xiaohua sent the storage pouch into the immortal dimension, leaving only 2 of the bones in his hands. Xiaohua took a quick look at the bone that recorded the fall of the Dao Sect Senior and sent it into the immortal dimension. Xiaohua would not recklessly enter a dangerous place where even the Dao Sect Senior had fallen. Next, Xiaohua placed all his attention on the refining method of the heaven leveling staff. Xiaohua's current refining level was already very high. Previously, he had fused the exquisite gold and great wisdom heavy sword into the 5 elements will heaven leveling staff. Now, with the help of the refining method, he naturally gained a lot. The more he looked at it, the more a smile appeared on his face. 3 days later, Xiaohua opened his eyes and stood up, keeping the capital star's array. Fairy Hong Xia and the rest stood up as well. When they opened the door of the hall, some guards were already waiting for them outside. Translators thoughts Seeing the two rows of guards guarding the steps in front of the palace, Xiao Hua understood that Ziming would definitely be able to obtain the spirit treasure nether passage mirror from the Empress Earth stronghold today. Thus, the four of them opened the palace door and stood guard outside, quietly waiting for Ziming's arrival. Who would have thought that this wait lasted until noon? Seeing that the scarlet sun was already high above their heads, Ziming still hadn't arrived. If it wasn't for Mo Han's warning, Xiao Hua wouldn't have let his imagination run wild. Thinking that even Mo Han had sensed something, could Ziming still be safe? Xiao Hua could not help but become impatient. Big brother, don't be anxious. Let me go ask. Xiao Mao saw Xiao Hua's impatience and hurriedly said. And Xiao Hua nodded gloomily. He had a bad premonition in his heart. However, when Xiao Mao walked out of the palace and asked the guards, he came back with a smile on his face. Big brother, we were all wrong. Xiao Mao said, that nether passage mirror can only be used at night. At this time, the sun is high in the sky and the yang energy is abundant. How can it communicate with the netherworld? Oh, that's true. Xiao Hua suddenly understood, and his heart relaxed. Moreover, that guard also said, Miss Ziming entered the ancestral hall 3 days ago and will come out after dusk today. They are only waiting here according to the ancestors' rules. Xiao Mao pointed at those guards again. Xiao Hua smiled and said, It seems that we are somewhat like birds startled by the twang of a bow. Yes, little brother was too impatient. Xiao Mao pursed his lips and said with a smile, Little brother really can't wait to know what mother looks like. At this point, Xiao Hua unconsciously raised his eyes and looked at Li Zongbao, who had not spoken much during this period of time. However, he saw that Li Zongbao was now similar to when he was in the great battle of Dao Sword. His face was as calm as water, as if what everyone said had nothing to do with him. AI, the treasured mirror of parting emotions, the treasured mirror of parting emotions. Xiao Hua sighed. It was originally a cultivation technique that made people fickle and heartless. Coupled with the backlash of the spiritual tool, senior brother Li's situation. I don't know if it's good or bad. Since they knew that nothing would happen, the four of them simply sat behind the door of the hall. The four of them all had secret techniques to comprehend, so they had to hurry. In a flash, thin clouds rose from the west, and a crescent moon that was thinner than a light eyebrow gradually hung in the sky. Ziming, who was dressed in plain clothes, finally arrived. Without waiting for Ziming to approach the steps of the main hall, the guards lined up on both sides of the hall, put their hands on the ground and bent their bodies. A kind of fear and a kind of reverence flashed in their eyes as they looked at Ziming, who was holding a white bone bracelet. This bone bracelet was extremely strange. It looked like Ziming was holding it with both hands, but in reality, it was 2 inches away from Ziming's hands, floating in the air. Moreover, this bone bracelet really did not stop rotating, sometimes left and right, sometimes up and down. A kind of dark green brilliance was born from the bone bracelet, as if it was a dark green ball of light. At this time, Ziming's expression was solemn. Her head was lowered, and her eyes were also looking at the bone bracelet. That night, her face was painted with a dark green color, which looked somewhat strange. Behind Ziming, there were also a dozen maidservants dressed in plain clothes. Their dressing was completely different from during the day. About 10 zhang behind these maidservants, Elder Sun Yu of the Jing Apple Village was waiting there with a little girl who was not more than 6 or 7 years old. When Xiao Hua and the others sensed Ziming's arrival, they all walked out of the main hall, originally wanting to welcome him. However, when they saw the solemn ceremony of the Huda village, they hurriedly returned to the main hall, fearing that their recklessness would disrupt the ceremony and cause trouble for no reason. Sure enough, when the four of them just returned to the main hall, a burst of singing and footsteps sounded. Those guards and the maidservants behind Ziming actually began to dance. Strands of light green brilliance slowly appeared, covering the main hall. Then, it slowly entered the dark green ball of light. After the time it took to eat a meal, the noise outside the main hall slowly stopped as Ziming's footsteps finally stepped on the stairs. Young Master Xiao, please come with me. Ziming walked into the main hall, his face as calm as water. Without even looking at the four of them, he just whispered an order and slowly walked towards the center of the main hall. Xiao Hua was slightly startled. He did not understand if he was talking about himself. However, when he saw Xiao Mao hurriedly walking towards him, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although the reason he came to the Huda village and used the Netherlink mirror was for Li Zongbao, in terms of importance, Xiao Mao was still the most important person. He did not seem to have done anything to use the Netherlink mirror, so why did Ziming call him? Seeing that Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia had also followed Xiao Mao, Xiao Hua looked at the maidservants who came in. Elders Sun Yu and the little boy who were waiting at the entrance of the main hall also quickly followed. When they reached the center of the main hall, Ziming stopped and respectfully placed his hands above his head. The bone bracelet also slowly rose up. After that, Ziming's hands and feet began to tremble, and he also began to dance. At the same time, he was also muttering some strange language of Meng Mountain. As he muttered, strands of green light flashed out, gradually entangling the ball of light of the bone bracelet. A buzzing sound was gradually heard, and the dark green brilliance gradually vibrated and became brighter as the green light increased. Puff, while Ziming was chanting, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood essence into the dark green brilliance that was as thin as a cicada's wing. With a cracking sound, the brilliance suddenly condensed into a single point and shot towards the top and bottom of the bone bracelet. With a muffled boom, as if the door of a house had been opened, 2 fist-sized holes appeared on the top and bottom of the bone bracelet. With a splash, like a blood waterfall, the blood of the netherworld gushed out from the holes and rushed into the middle of the bone bracelet along the brilliance. In that instant, the entire bone bracelet turned blood red. At the same time, a layer of blood membrane was formed from the bone bracelet. This blood membrane did not stop, but condensed into blood on the other side of the bone bracelet and rushed into the other hole. Chapter 29:10. Ziming's face was pale. He pointed at the netherworld mirror, and the blood-red membrane slowly fell down. It was about the height of a person, and the netherworld water on the blood membrane slowly flowed. It looked very similar to a mirror. Young Master Xiao, Ziming spoke, "Come closer and think of the person you are looking for. That person's face will appear on the netherworld mirror. Even her situation in the netherworld may appear." At this point, how could Xiao Mao still be suspicious of this spirit treasure that was obviously not related to a mirror? He walked in front of the blood membrane with great sincerity and opened his eyes wide. Although Xiao Hua was not close to the blood membrane, he still stared at it closely, trying to find something from it. Unfortunately, after half a cup of tea's time, the entire blood membrane flashed with a green light, and then it shone like a bright moon. It covered Xiao Mao's entire face. After half a cup of tea's time, the green light dimmed, and the blood membrane gradually revealed itself. Behind the green light, Xiao Mao had tears streaming down his face. Young Master Li, Ziming's expression did not change, and he ordered methodically, "It's your turn." But Li Zongbao replied. Although his expression was calm, his voice was obviously trembling, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Xiao Mao retreated and hurriedly took out a jade scroll. He sat down cross-legged, and without caring about the others, he immersed his spirit into it. Li Zongbao walked to where Xiao Mao was, and similarly opened his eyes wide, staring at the blood membrane. After a while, the green light flashed, and Li Zongbao's face was also covered. But it only covered for a moment, and the green light disappeared again. Only the faint sound of flowing water could be heard from the blood membrane. Why is this? Li Zongbao was extremely surprised, and looked at Ziming. Ziming said indifferently, "The person young Master Li is thinking of is not in the netherworld, or rather, she is not dead." How is that possible? Not only was Li Zongbao shocked, even Xiao Hua and Fairy Hongxia were shocked. Li Zongbao turned to look at Xiao Hua. Her corpse was personally sent back by this Xiao. Xiao Hua hastily said as he took a step forward. "That's right, I personally buried her." Fairy Hongxia said curiously, Could it be that she has already reincarnated?" "Reincarnation may not be true," Ziming replied indifferently. "Even if there is such a thing as reincarnation, the spirit treasures of my Ho-Tu stronghold can see it. Unless this person isn't dead. Let me take a look again. Li Zongbao asked in disbelief. Young Master Li has already seen it. You can't look at it anymore. Ziming shook his head. However, since Mr. Li did not see it, it doesn't count. Between Mr. Xiao and Fairy Hong Xia, one of them can still see it. You go. Xiao Hua said to Fairy Hong Xia without hesitation. Alright. Fairy Hong Xia also missed her elder sister immensely and hurriedly walked over. Li Zongbao hurriedly stepped aside. Under the watchful gazes of the masses, Fairy Hong Xia did the same as Li Zongbao. The brilliance did not stop at all as it disappeared in a flash. That's right. This person wasn't dead. There's no need to look anymore. Ziming became more and more certain. He looked at Xiao Hua and said, Young Master Xiao, you have 2 chances. Come and take a look. What do I have to look at? Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. Although Xiao Hongyue and Gong Mingwei had fallen for a long time, Xiao Hua had a deep impression of their voices and smiles. There was no need for him to look. Furthermore, the 2 of them were in another world in the netherworld. Xiao Hua did not want to disturb them. Sigh, if only senior sister was here. Xiao Hua thought and turned to look at Elder Sun Yu and the young child. He said, let's invite Elder Sun Yu over. After all, they have proper matters to attend to. Ziming naturally knew of Xiao Hua's kindness. He nodded his head and said, Elder Sun Yu, invite Bo Hong over. Alright. Elder Sun Yu was overjoyed. He hurriedly brought the young child over. Ziming was afraid that the young child did not know, so he repeated the key points again. Only then did he let the young child stand there. Although the young child named Bo Hong was young, his eyes flashed with determination. He bit his lips and looked at the blood membrane. This time, it was even easier. In a breath's time, a green light covered Bo Hong's face. After a cup of tea's time, the green light dispersed. After the green light disappeared, Bo Hong's face revealed a terrified expression. It was as if he had seen something terrifying. However, the child's small hands were tightly clenched, although they were trembling. Saw it? Elder Sun Yu's face was extremely gloomy as he asked in a deep voice. Bo Hong did not answer. He only nodded his head firmly. Elder Sun Yu sighed. He raised his head and said to Ziming, Young Miss Ziming, there should be one more chance for this netherworld mirror. Can you? Ziming knew what he wanted to say. He shook his head and said, It's almost past midnight. It's too late to ask her to come over. Sigh, fate makes fools of people. Elder Sun Yu held Bo Hong's hand and bowed to Ziming. He then thanked Xiao Hua and the others and stood to the side. There's still a cup of tea's worth of time left. Ziming looked around and her gaze landed on Xiao Hua. She said indifferently, Young Master Xiao won 2 chances to use the netherworld mirror. Because of this, you also lost Zai. This opportunity cannot be wasted. Right now, only young Master Xiao can use the netherworld mirror. Come over. But who am I looking at? Xiao Hua scratched his head. He knew that this was a rare opportunity that could not be wasted. However, he really did not know who to look at. Forget it. Let's look at Master. Xiao Hua walked in front of the blood membrane and said in his heart, When I see senior sister and second senior brother, I can explain it to them. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua looked at the blood membrane that was flowing like water. Xiao Hua's eyes fell on the blood membrane, but his mind couldn't calm down. Xiao Hongyue's and Gong Mingwei's faces kept appearing in his mind. Although the flowing blood membrane flickered with a faint green light, it didn't shine for a long time. This adult had experienced many things and thought about many things. Although he was a cultivator and paid attention to his Tao heart, he was not as pure as a child. Forget it. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He knew that he was unable to calm down. Just as he was about to move his eyes away, an unimaginable thought suddenly appeared in his mind. That's right. Why can't I think about my own life? Perhaps I can see something from it? Dream. I remember that when Hong Xia was in danger at the Sword Peak, this name suddenly appeared in my mind. Perhaps I can find something from it. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and gradually wiped away the faces of Xiao Hongyue and Gong Mingwei. Gradually, a faintly discernible beauty mark appeared in his mind. Zi Ming was also somewhat anxious. Seeing that the time was about to come, the netherworld mirror still had not emitted a green light. Just as she was about to speak, a wing sound was heard. The entire netherworld mirror emitted an intense brilliance. In an instant, it covered Xiao Hua. This brilliance was so intense that it far exceeded what Zi Ming had seen before. Zi Ming was shocked. As for Xiao Hua, in the instant that beauty mark appeared in his mind, he saw the blood membrane that was originally gurgling with blood suddenly become blurry. It was as if it had entered a teleportation. All of the blood vessels were distorted and all of the green light was elongated. After a burst of light and shadow changed in front of his eyes, a huge pitch-black silhouette appeared in front of him. It was like a huge palace, but also like an unparalleled monster in the world. However, before he could see clearly what this silhouette was, an extremely strange and icy cold voice resounded by his ear, and it spoke a few words that he didn't understand at all. Immediately after, his vision became heavy as numerous enormous shadows smashed down like boulders, and the blood-red nether passage mirror appeared before his eyes once more. However, at this time, all of the blood within the netherworld mirror was cut off. All of the green light was scattered. Moreover, this scattering spread to the bone ring around the blood membrane in an instant. Gotcha! A few crisp sounds rang out. The entire bone ring cracked in 3 places. A mirror-like shadow flashed out at the same time as the cracks appeared. It turned into specks of light and rushed into the blood flow. Moreover, as the bone ring broke, the 2 holes pierced by the green light instantly disappeared. The large amount of blood flowing between the 2 holes immediately turned into an incomparably ferocious hell wind that soared into the sky. It was like a huge hammer smashing towards the roof of the hall. Although the roof of the main hall flashed with green light, which seemed to be the defense of the soul array, under this unparalleled netherworld wind pillar, it was easily torn apart. A hole of about 10 feet appeared on the roof of the main hall. The netherworld wind pillar rushed into the night sky and disappeared. Only faint starlight sprinkled down from the hole and fell on Zi Ming, who was caught off guard and did not know what to do. And on the entire main hall, all of the people who were dumbfounded. Young Master Xiao, what are you doing? After a long while, Zi Ming hesitantly asked. His gaze timidly looked at the bone ring that had already broken into several pieces and fallen on the floor of the main hall. I really did not do anything. Xiao Hua was also extremely wronged. I just wanted to take a look. I did not expect it to be like this. Zi Ming almost wanted to cry. He asked closely, Then what did you see? What did you want to see? I also do not know what I wanted to see. And I also do not know what I saw. Xiao Hua wanted to cry even more. He really did not see anything. It was just a blurry outline. Who the hell knew what it was? Young Master Xiao, you have caused this concubine to suffer. Zi Ming stomped his feet and bent down to pick up the bone ring. But at this time, a ghostly voice came from the hole. Zi Ming. This is all because of you. How did this old woman treat you? You can ask yourself. I did not expect you to do such a thing against this old woman. G-Man? Xiao Hua and Zi Ming were both shocked. They were about to raise their heads to look at the sky. At this time, a strong turbulence rushed in from the hole. It was like a netherworld wind pillar that broke the sky and trapped Xiao Hua and the other 4 people. Chapter 29:11. Xiao Hua didn't even have time to use his mana before he felt a sharp pain in his head. If his soul stab was like a sharp knife, then G-Man's soul stab was like a mountain of knives and a sea of knives. Xiao Hua's body was covered in cuts and bruises. Moreover, in the instant his magic power became sluggish and his head started to hurt, several dark green rays of light entangled by the black gas descended from the sky like dark green pythons, firmly trapping Xiao Hua. Not only was his magic power shackled, even his physical body was numb and powerless. Roar. How could Xiao Hua allow himself to be captured so easily? He forcefully activated the Dragonization Manual and also forcefully activated the Celestial Body Bestowment Technique. A layer of faint golden light suddenly appeared on the surface of his body. This golden light was like a thorn that pierced straight into the dark green giant python, forcefully creating a gap of half an inch. There was another cold snort. A pale white streak of light came down from the sky. It was a soul armament. This soul armament was about the size of a palm, but it suddenly expanded in size in the wind of the netherworld. Like a giant hand, it slammed into Xiao Hua's golden light. Kacha kacha. There was a series of cracking sounds as the large lock turned into a shackle that locked Xiao Hua's entire body in place. One by one, white bones started to form and pierce deep into Xiao Hua's body. The golden light around Xiao Hua's body was immediately extinguished. Two sharp sword-like bone spurs emerged from the shackles and protruded from Xiao Hua's back. They dangerously pressed against the back of Xiao Hua's head and the top of his head. Those sharp points had already pierced into Xiao Hua's skin. An enormous force emerged from the white bones of the shackles. Not only did it completely confine Xiao Hua's body and meridians, it also sealed the mysterious dark clouds. Xiao Hua sighed. This G-man was far too strong. Looking at Ziming and the others, he saw that they were also trapped by the giant python. There was nothing they could do to resist. Xiao Hua looked up to see G-man's malevolent face. Slowly coming out from the hole, G-man's eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at everyone. Lord G-man, Xiao Hua struggled with all his might, but it seemed that he still had some strength left in him. He shouted, "This Xiao was the one who broke this nether passage mirror. I will bear all the responsibility." The nether passage mirror. Hee, you're really powerful, spiritual master Xiao. You actually destroyed the soul treasure of my Hutus Decade. Do you really intend to join hands with this slut to snatch my Hutus Decade from my hands? When G-man heard this, he glanced at the wreckage of the Netherlink mirror on the ground. A trace of astonishment flashed across his face as he spoke coldly. G-man, what do you mean? Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Ziming also said coldly, although this boy has made some mistakes, when has he ever had such a rebellious heart? Could it be that G-man? Haha, if you have a mind to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. You really won't turn back until you hit the wall. What are you still trying to hide from me? With a wave of G-man's hand, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside the hall. Over 100 armored guards were escorting dozens of soul warriors into the hall. These dozens of soul warriors were all drenched in blood, and their faces were filled with malevolence. What is this for? Ziming squinted his eyes and said indifferently, these are all boys' close attendants. It was precisely because the boy was worried that the Hutus Decade's defense would be lax that he sent them out to patrol. G-man captured them all and even tortured them for questioning. But could it be? G-man wants to force the boy into harm? What do I need a reason to do? You're just a candidate for G-man. Do I need to force you into harm? G-man laughed bitterly. It's just that I never thought that this old woman would be so kind to you. Everything I did was for your sake. I even gave you a fair chance. But you're actually a mountain wolf that can't be tamed. Just a little bit of success and you became so arrogant. Not only did you do so many things behind my back that made my heart cold, you even killed Lu. Did you know? Lula had warned this old woman more than once, but this old woman had always believed you. I thought that a woman who vowed to revive others would not have any evil intentions. But I never thought that your revival of others was just an excuse. It was just a way for you to cover up your evil deeds. Once the time is right, you'll reveal your sharp teeth. You really made me give up. G-man, why don't you stop talking? Facing G-man's madness, Ziming replied indifferently, could it be that you didn't sleep well last night and suddenly went crazy? For no reason, you killed the boy's close attendants and even captured the boy and the others. You even took out the Hutus Decade's soul lock to deal with the guests from the country of Shi. Oh, what does your Lu-er's life have to do with the boy? Besides, the one who wants him dead is probably that Lu-er called Ziyen, right? The boy only needs to light up the soul loss lamp and he'll be G-man. Why do you have to look for trouble and take other people's lives? Hee hee, even now, you're still so stubborn. Don't think that I can't kill you just because Elder Wu isn't in the Huda stockade. G-Man sneered, knowing that Ziming had nothing to fear. She clapped her hands and took out a fist-sized token, saying, "Of course, I won't kill you secretly. The reason I made such a big fuss is to tell the whole Huda stockade that I have Elder Wu's token in my hands. With this token, as long as I bring you to the ancestral temple and report to the Huda Great God, I'll be able to exercise Elder Wu's responsibility. Naturally, I can also use this to kill all of you." Hearing this, Ziming's face turned pale, but then he smiled faintly. Boy has long thought about this situation. You want to get rid of the boy and make way for your Lu? It's not that the boy doesn't know. It's just that the boy has always been under Elder Wu's protection and didn't let you succeed. Now that Elder Wu is really on a long journey, you're using this opportunity to show off your power. The boy had long expected this when he returned to the Hutu stockade. However, the boy didn't expect you to wait until now to make your move. You're really shrewd. G-Man snorted again, her anger rising again. You're just like that bitch, always thinking that you're infallible and putting your own thoughts on others. You only think that you're the most reasonable person in the world. Don't you think that if I had the intention to get rid of you, why would I wait until now? Even if Elder Wu is in the Huda stockade, I can still kill you. Haven't you already done it? Why didn't you wait for Elder Wu to come back? Ziming bit his lips so hard that some blood vessels appeared, and he reprimanded her word by word. That's because I can't wait any longer. G-Man's voice was terrifyingly cold. Wu has some expectations for Elder Wu's position, and I know that. But I've warned him before, Meng Mountains will always have a lot of kinship, and we can't split the Huda stockade into two just because of some power. In the early years, the ancestors of Meng Mountains had such considerations when they set up Elder Wu and G-Man in the Shaman stockade. Lu is very obedient, and he's always listened to my words. He's always given in to you, and he's never fought with Zai for anything in the Huda stockade. But this time, when the weather in Meng Mountains changed, you lit up the soul-drawing lantern, disregarding the life and death of the people of Meng Mountains. Wu is very obedient, and for the sake of the people of Meng Mountains, he worked tirelessly. I don't even know how many hardships he went through before he finally found the source of the change in the weather, and he even asked for a battle before me, saying that he's willing to lead his subordinates to wipe it out. Look at what Lu has done, and look at you. You've really disgusted me. I really don't know how I've tolerated you all these years. The more G-Man spoke, the more agitated she became, and her entire body was trembling. It seemed like she was really enraged by the sudden news. Of course you like your Lu. No one else can compare to him. Ziming had already thrown caution to the wind, and he didn't care about anything else. He said calmly, "But do you know what your Lu did in Huda stockade? What did he do in the vicinity of Peacock Mound?" That's right, you're absolutely right. In your eyes, Lu has always been a thorn in your side. That so-called change in the weather is probably a trap that you've painstakingly set up, right? It was also you who leaked this information to Lu, or through someone else, right? You didn't dare to ask for help from Huda stockade, so you took advantage of the cultivators you've met in Shi to ask them to help you, right? G-Man laughed angrily. My poor Lu. That day, I even told him clearly that such a change in the weather could not be caused by a single soul beast. But for the sake of the people of Meng Mountains, he didn't listen to my advice, and even said that he wouldn't know until he tried. If you had 10% of Lu's loyalty, how could you have thought of such a vicious plan to kill Xiao Chong? At this point, G-Man waved her hand and said coldly, "Kill them all." The guards in the hall responded. At the same time, they waved their hands. Without using any machetes, the heads of the dozens of captured spirit warriors were immediately separated from their necks. Their blood spurted high into the air, and the entire hall was immediately filled with the pungent smell of blood. However, all the spirit warriors in the hall seemed to be very familiar with this. Even the 10-year-old child from Jing Chong's stockade didn't show any signs of fear. The guards threw away the corpses of the dead spirit warriors and strode to the pool of blood in front of them. They reached out their hands and picked up the heads of the spirit warriors, stuffing them into their waists. Ziming coldly looked at this scene and said coldly, "Just now you said that others killed Xiao Chong, but now you killed the spirit warriors of Hutustakade in the blink of an eye, and you didn't even ask. It was my order, how could they deserve the death penalty?" "Heh, you finally admit it?" G-Man laughed coldly. "This old woman thought that you would be stubborn to the end." What did I admit? These are just my subordinates. Whatever they did, it should be my responsibility. If you didn't want to cut off my power, why would you suddenly kill them? Ziming denied again. Xiao Hua was very surprised. He didn't understand why Ziming would hide the truth of the matter. Didn't Ziming have a soul item that contained the souls of the demon dwellers? If he took it out and showed it to G-Man, she would know. Ziming also said clearly that G-Man and Elder Wu were soul cultivators. It was very unlikely that they would be possessed by the demon dwellers. Chapter 29:12. G-Man threw his head back and laughed. His laughter was sharp like an owl's. "If this old one doesn't bring out the evidence, I'm afraid you'll never admit it. Your personality is exactly the same as that slut's." Following G-Man's order, a short, dark-skinned and skinny soul warrior rushed into the hall. Xiao Hua stared at the soul warrior for a long time, but he couldn't see anything. In his eyes, the dark, skinny soul warriors didn't look too different from each other. If they didn't have any obvious characteristics, he might not be able to tell them apart. The soul warrior rushed into the hall and knelt in front of G-Man. He pointed at Ziming, Xiao Hua, and the others and said sorrowfully, "G-Man, you must seek justice for young Master Ziyen. They were the ones who worked together to kill young Master Ziyen near the Yellow Sand Ridge. I risked my life to escape from their hands. I didn't even have the time to collect young Master's corpse. Ji Qing, don't worry. Take your time and tell me all the details clearly. Not only are the elders of the Huta Stockade here, but there are also G-Man and the others from the Jing Apple Stockade. They will definitely seek justice for you and announce this matter to the public." G-Man's tone calmed down as he instructed. Xiao Hua frowned and raised his head to look. Sure enough, the elders he saw at the back Earth Hall, as well as G-Man and the others from the Jing Apple Stronghold, were slowly walking into the hall. Each of them had a look of astonishment on their faces as they looked at the hall strangely. They seemed to have been summoned by G-Man from all over the place. "Yes." Ji Qing took a deep breath and said, "On that day, young Master Ziyen received the news." As Ji Qing explained the ins and outs of the matter, everyone's face was filled with indignation. According to Ji Qing, Ziyen was the one who fell into Ziming's trap for the sake of Meng Shan's life, and Ziming was the one who wanted to eliminate Ziyen at all costs for the sake of G-Man's position. In the end, Ji Qing even prostrated himself on the ground and said, "G-Man, there were dozens of brothers who came back with this little one. We rushed back to the back Earth stronghold day and night, but we didn't expect Miss Ziming to set up an ambush along the way. Except for this little one, the other brothers were all killed by her trusted subordinates. This little one hid in Huanqi Mountain for a long time and didn't dare to show my face. If I didn't meet Elder Yen Su from the Kenji stronghold and know that young Master Zi had returned to the embrace of the great god Hutu, many Wu elders and G-Man had gathered at the back Earth stronghold, this little one wouldn't have dared to ask Elder Yen Su to send this little one back to the back Earth stronghold." Sigh. Xiao Mao couldn't help but sigh when he heard Ji Qing's words. Ji Qing's ability to lie was comparable to Xiao Hua's. Therefore, everything he said was basically true. However, he would always say one or two lies at the end of the story. These few lies would distort the truth of the entire matter, causing people to think that Ziyen, who was originally an evil person, was the incomparably righteous Ziyen, while Ziming, who was killed, became the main culprit. However, Ziming didn't have anything to refute, because she really did kill him afterwards. "How is it?" G-Man asked indifferently. "Ziming, what else do you have to say?" "G-Man killed Ziyen. The boy doesn't deny it." Ziming finally spoke. "But why didn't you think that the boy could have dealt with Ziyen and the 9 divine guards by relying on these few cultivators from the country of Shi?" However, just as Ziming finished speaking, he sighed again. "Sure enough," G-Man coldly said, "that drought demon was your trap." The 9 divine guards were simply no match for Drought Demon. You naturally didn't rely on these cultivators, but rather that Drought Demon. Xiaohua looked at Xiao Mao and also smiled bitterly. Who would have known that Drought Demon had pledged allegiance to Xiao Mao later on? Xiao Huan naturally also thought that Zi Ming's maids could testify for her. However, Xiaohua had seen a few of these maids at the very beginning. Later on, they disappeared without a trace. Obviously, they were killed by Zi Yan. How could they testify? Why wasn't it Zi Yan who set up a trap to deal with the boy? Zi Ming couldn't help but refute. Ji Man glanced at Zi Ming and Xiaohua, nodded and said, as the first candidate for Ji Man's position, if Zi Yan wanted to meddle with the Grand Witch, he could naturally deal with you. But he cares about Meng Mountain and wants to benefit the people of Meng Mountain and save them from danger. Why would he care about the position of Grand Witch? Look at you. I already know that this so-called Taoist Xiao has some seeds that can try to solve the current predicament, but for your own selfishness, you used them as the price to haggle with me and Grand Wish. You took these seeds in your own hands. You even want to use these seeds to set up another leader outside of Grand Witch and G-Man of Hutsu Stronghold, dividing the people of Hutsu Stronghold. Zi Ming, oh Zi Ming, your intentions are terrible. Seeds? What seeds? G-Man of Jinggong Stronghold was puzzled. The seeds taken from the Netherworld Eye, could it be that they can't compare to these seeds? Go and ask him. G-Man pointed at another skinny old man in the distance. When the old man saw G-Man pointing at him, he quickly walked out from the crowd, bowed and said, I'm Grand Witch of Weeping Fowl Stronghold. More than half a year ago, I learned from the people of Wu Stronghold that they are planting a strange seed. This seed is different from the previous ones. It's not afraid of the drought in Meng Mountain, and it grows very fast, much faster than the previous seeds. Overjoyed, I quickly asked, and only then did I know that it was Miss Zi Ming's doing. Of course, at that time, I guessed that it was G-Man's grace to let Miss Zi Ming pick the most difficult Wu Stronghold to try. She must not have much confidence, and if she had a result, she would definitely come to me and Grand Witch to discuss this matter. But after waiting for a long time, I didn't receive the summons of G-Man and Grand Wish. Instead, I received the bad news of young Master Zai. I came to Huda Stronghold because I missed young Master Zai, and also because I wanted to ask G-Man and Grand Witch about the seeds. But during the entire ceremony, G-Man didn't mention anything about the seeds, so I didn't dare to probe further. So, I waited in the stronghold, trying to see if I could get the seeds as soon as possible. After all, although the seeds were useful, they were too little. If G-Man could give us more seeds, the people of Weeping Fowl Stronghold wouldn't starve to death anymore. The Grand Witch continued, but after waiting for a long time, I didn't see anything. Thinking of those people who starved to death, I couldn't hold it in any longer. That's why I boldly asked to see Master G-Man. You can leave now. G-Man nodded. After I get the seeds, I'll give them to Weeping Fowl's Stronghold first. Thank you, G-Man. The old man bowed and left. G-Man, Jingapple Stronghold needs more seeds. G-Man of Jingapple Stronghold quickly shouted. I know. G-Man took a deep breath and said, I don't even have a single seed now. What do you want me to give you? This. G-Man of Jingapple Stronghold quickly looked at Zi Ming. Zi Ming, this is also the reason why I'm extremely disappointed in you, and why I've completely given up on you. G-Man said, you clearly have the seeds that can save the people of Meng Mountains, why don't you take them out? Do you think the position of G-Man is more important, or the people of Meng Mountains? If you want the position of G-Man, you only need to tell me. As long as you take out the seeds, even if the soul-setting lamp isn't repaired, even if you can't light up the soul-setting lamp, I can still appoint you as G-Man's successor. I can even give you the position of G-Man right now. You're so straightforward. But if the boy offers the seeds, I'm afraid you'll be the first to send the boy to meet the great godhood. Zi Ming stiffened his neck and said coldly. But what about now? G-Man's tone was also cold. You've given up your life, but didn't you still give the seeds to me? Don't you feel regret? That's right. That day, the boy had already told others. This seeds will eventually be given to the people of Meng Mountains, or when the boy lights up the soul-setting lamp, or when the boy returns to the embrace of the great God Hu. Therefore, the boy has never felt regret. Ji-man. Xiaohua saw that Ziming was already determined to die, so he quickly called out. Shut up. Ji-man scolded and waved the bone staff in her hand. Xiaohua immediately couldn't speak. He couldn't even open his mouth to speak. Xiao Mao and the others were also the same. It's all because of you Taoist sect cultivators from the country of Xi. Ziming was originally a good person, but after getting to know you guys, his heart had these filthy thoughts. If you guys didn't talk to him about revenge, or his background, how could he have fallen into such a dead situation? Ji-man said fiercely. Xiaohua was anxious. He finally understood why Ji-man didn't care about Xiao Mao's matter. Moreover, he also understood that today, Ji-man had the intention to kill, and none of them would be able to survive. Xiaohua's mind spun rapidly, trying to come up with a countermeasure. Unfortunately, his cultivation base was too far away from Ji-man, and his entire body was sealed by Ji-man. Now, he couldn't use any of his methods, so how could he fight back? I'm afraid this is the only method left. Xiaohua quickly sent his mind into the mysterious dark cloud. Although that place was sealed by the soul lock, and his soul strands, primordial spirit and little white dragon couldn't come out, his mind still had a trace of connection with his primordial spirit. He urged the primordial spirit in the dark cloud to speed up the practice of the soul strands, so that he could fight back before Ji-man killed him. Ji-man. Ziming said indifferently, the boy can offer the seeds, but Ji-man must agree to one condition of the boy. What condition? Ji-man asked back. Young Master Xiao and the others have nothing to do with this matter. They only occasionally got involved. Moreover, these seeds were brought here by young Master Xiao from the country of Xi. As long as you let them go, the boy will immediately offer up the seeds. Ziming glanced at Xiaohua, who had his eyes closed, and said softly. See, hearing this, Xiaohua immediately opened his eyes. He was wrong. So, the reason why Ziming didn't take out the seeds was to use them as a bargaining chip to exchange for a chance to save them. Chapter 29:13. If I don't release them, will you not give me those millet seeds? Ji-man sneered. That's right. Those millet seeds, boy, have been taken out of Hutu's stronghold by my subordinates. As soon as they hear the news of the boy's death, they will immediately destroy the soul nest. They don't even know what's inside. Ziming nodded. Ha, look, Ji-man pointed with her hand. You are the descendant of Hutu great god, but you don't treat your own people as your own. The trillions of people in Meng Mountain are not even worth a few damn cultivators. If I compromise with you, how am I going to explain to Hutu great god? Not to mention that they killed Lu. I will not let them go. Just because they led you astray, I will kill them. Ji-man, Ziming said anxiously, they really have nothing to do with this. Ziyan's death was also because they wanted to save the boy. Ji-man waved her hand, stopping Ziming's explanation, and said, Don't worry, I will definitely kill them by your side. I will let you know the feeling of your loved one dying before you die. Hearing the words of his loved one, Ziming's face flushed red. The hatred in his eyes faded as he glanced at Xiaohua. Xiaohua had his eyes closed and did not know. Fairy Hongxia was a little embarrassed and angry. She glared fiercely at Ziming. Poor Fairy Hongxia. Previously, she had been burdened by Jiuxia's matter and was somewhat resentful towards Xiaohua. However, Jiuxia had saved her life. Furthermore, Jiuxia knew when to stop and leave. This made Fairy Hongxia feel somewhat comforted. Now that they came to Hutu's stronghold, this Ziming was actually Ziyi. Back in Sky Patrol City, before Fairy Hongxia joined the battle, he already had an affair with Xiaohua. How could Fairy Hongxia not be miserable? Now, Fairy Hongxia had not recovered from the joy and shock of knowing that her sister did not die. Once again, she was awakened by Ji-man's words. How could she not be angry? Since Ji-man knows about this, then, you must know that if young Master Xiao and the others cannot leave safely, that millet boy will definitely be destroyed. Ziming said resolutely. Since you have such thoughts, then, you should also understand my feelings. Since they killed Lu, this old woman will definitely not let them off. G-Man replied word by word. You're so good at devising strategies, but there's still a flaw. Not to mention that after I kill you all, I can still find the seed in your storage bags. Why don't you try? Ziming sneered. G-Man ignored her and continued, furthermore, since you've already broken off all ties with this old woman, you shouldn't have used this seed on the way back to the back Earth stockade. Now, even if I were to kill all of you, with those seeds in Weeping Lychee Stronghold, I have absolute confidence that I can replace all the seeds in Meng Mountains within 100 years. The millet seeds in your hands right now, it doesn't matter if this old woman wants them or not. It was just a matter of starving the people to death. The sins of these people will all be on your head. Do you think this boy didn't think of this? Speaking up to hear, Ziming's eyes flashed with a touch of tenderness. Unfortunately, young Master Xiao and the others have the world in their hearts. Although they are not the people of Meng Mountains, they are better than the people of Meng Mountains. When they saw too many people starving to death along the way, they threw their own safety to the back of their minds and insisted on keeping the millet seeds. Although this boy knows that this is not appropriate, it can't stop them from being kind. If they were kind, why would they set a trap in the peacock tomb with you? G-Man didn't believe it at all. She waved her hand and said, the truth has been revealed, and this old woman has said all that I can say. In addition, this old woman has revealed this matter in front of all the elders, and recorded this matter in the Magus Code. Even if the Grand Magus returns, even if the people of Back Earth Stockade ask, this old woman has a reason to reply. Ziming, now that things have come to this old woman doesn't want to say anything more. When you return to the embrace of Back Earth Great God, you can reflect on your evil deeds. Xiao Mao didn't know what Xiao Hua was doing, but his calmness was different from Li Zongbao's. His corporeal body struggled to break free, and he even opened his mouth to scream. He really wanted to tell the truth, and let Ziming take out the soul artifact that imprisoned the demon's soul. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free, and he couldn't even say a single word. Fairy Hong Xia looked at Li Zongbao, and there was helplessness in both of their eyes. They knew that the danger today was far greater than anything they had ever faced before. When the city gate was on fire, the fish in the moat would also suffer. Perhaps, these 4 Taoist sect disciples who came to Meng Mountains from thousands of miles away were really going to die in the fierce struggle for power in Back Earth Stockade. As for Xiao Hua, the only person who could create a miracle, he was trapped in the mysterious dark cloud. Countless soul strands were moving around like lightning, and strands of green light were flashing. One after another, shapeless green seal text was forming and disappearing amidst strange noises. The current situation was somewhat similar to when Xiao Hua condensed his core. His endless potential was forced out under the threat of death. Furthermore, Xiao Hua didn't have the time to think about how to consume the rejuvenation pill and how to replenish the loss of his life essence. But how could the ancient green seal text be so easy to comprehend? How could the so-called witchcraft curse be released so easily by the soul strands? Enter the ancestral hall. After G-Man finished speaking, he looked at Xiao Hua and the others with disgust, and then looked at Ziming, who had an unusually calm face. He waved his hand and gave an order, and then walked out of the hall. Following G-Man's orders, the guards who had just killed Ziming's subordinates rushed out, each of them grabbing Xiao Hua and the rest. Their hands that were still stained with blood were grabbing Xiao Hua and the rest by their necks. As for Fairy Hong Xia and Ziming, they were helped up by the maidservants and followed behind the guards. After coming out from the hall, G-Man's face was still pale. What happened to Ziming and Ziyen was a huge blow to her. She had tried her best to maintain the balance of power in Back Earth Stockade, but things had come to a stage that she didn't want to see. The crowd was like a tide, and G-Man was standing at the tip of the tide. Everyone behind her had a panicked and shocked expression. It was as if they had suddenly woken up in the middle of the night and suddenly realized that the things that didn't happen in their dreams had actually happened. Young Miss Ziming had actually killed Ziyen, and G-Man was actually going to kill Ziming without Elder Wu's permission. At this moment, The sky was already bright, and a smear of white appeared in the sky. Clouds the size of a fist covered the sky, and the edges of the clouds were faintly golden. When the golden light fell, it illuminated the entire back earth stockade, illuminating the crowd. Following G-Man, they passed through the various halls of the back earth stockade and arrived at the back of the mountain. There were also some halls behind the mountain, but these halls were different from the ones in front of the mountain. These halls were all huge. Some were built with large stones, some were supported by huge trees, and each hall was inlaid with countless white bones. Most of the palaces in the front of the mountain were red in color, but these halls were mostly dark green in color. The back of the mountain was rather barren, with rugged rocks and thick withered trees everywhere. Even in between the halls, one could vaguely see some white bones. If Xiaohua opened his eyes right now and saw such a scene, perhaps he wouldn't be as surprised as he was when he saw the palaces in Back Earth Stockade, because this barren scene was what he had imagined the shaman's stronghold to be like. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was casually carried by a dark and skinny guard, like a hunter carrying his prey. Although Xiaohua's forehead would occasionally flash with a green glow, and faint sobbing sounds could be heard coming from the green glow, it didn't attract the guard's attention at all. Walking along the wide mountain path, G-Man arrived in front of a huge hall in the time it took to eat a meal. This hall was obviously different from the other halls. Not only was it because the entire hall was white in color, but also because the doors and pillars were all built with white bones. On top of these white bones, countless strange beasts and nether beasts were engraved with an unknown method. These nether beasts were vivid and lifelike, and looked extremely terrifying. The sound mirage beast that Xiaohua and Ziming encountered in the Sea of Netherworld was actually one of these nether beasts. G-Man came to a stop in front of the door. Waving her hand, she began to mutter something under her breath. A faint green light began to emerge from the bone staff in her hand. But just as she was about to open the soul array, a scorching hot and furious soul sense swept over from afar. Ping ping ping! A series of popping noises followed. Ah! Screams of agony began to ring through the air. G-Man sensed it and snorted coldly. The green glow in her hand dissipated, and she turned around to see where the soul sense came from. In the dimly lit sky, an orange-red flame was flying over at an extremely fast speed. In the sky, there were already many guards of Back Earth Stockade riding their soul beasts in front of this flame, but no matter if it was soul beasts or soul warriors, before they could even get close to the flame, a dark red flame flashed around their bodies, and their bodies exploded from the inside out. Blood splattered everywhere, and they fell from the sky. Woo! A deep and furious roar came from afar, and an indescribable feeling of dryness suddenly appeared in G-Man's heart. They're finally here. G-Man's body flashed with green light as she spoke in a low voice. G. In contrast to G-Man's calmness, at the foot of the mountain furthest away from G-Man, the ground beneath the feet of the soul warriors had already begun to crack open. The originally dry soil was drying up and turning yellow at a speed visible to the naked eye, and grains of yellow sand were gradually forming. The soul warriors couldn't help but begin to panic. Raising their heads to look at the massacre in the sky, they cried out in alarm despite knowing that they couldn't panic. Woo! Sensing the arrival of Hanba, Xiaomao opened his mouth and let out a whimper. He stopped struggling, and a look of joy appeared in his eyes. Boom boom boom, more and more soul warriors flew into the sky to stop Hanba, but they weren't a match for Hanba at all. Hanba's thick palm would raise from time to time, and every time it raised, several soul warriors would turn into a mist of blood. Every time it raised its palm, several soul warriors would scream and fall from the sky with sparks flying all over their bodies. Chapter 29:14. Keech, a sharp cry came from somewhere in the Back Earth stronghold. Like a command, the spirit warriors that were flying in the air immediately stopped and hurriedly dodged. Then, the 36 white-haired elders waved their bone staffs and flew into the air. It was clear that these 36 elders had been accumulating their power for a long time. Just as they rose into the air, streaks of dark green light were produced from their bone staffs. These streaks of light were like dots of light that constantly moved between them. In just a moment, A huge green net was born between these elders. Swoosh, the moment the green net was formed, a clear sound came from the sky. Countless ghost heads appeared along with this sound. Furthermore, the green light turned into dots, each of which was an extremely small ghost head. Oh, oh, oh. A mournful ghost cry came out from these ghost heads. That cold and bloodthirsty aura immediately filled the entire green net. The strange thing was that after these ghost heads howled in unison, not only did the green brilliance disappear, even the ghost heads disappeared as well. It was as if nothing had ever appeared. Hitorigami had already flown close to the elders. At this moment, Hitorigami was different from before. The red hair on Hitorigami's body had all faded away. It was similar to its face. However, Hitorigami's skin was extremely thick. It looked like the texture of a mountain rock. The phosphorescent runes had also faded away. It looked like an ordinary person. Hanba stopped. An ominous glint appeared in its crimson eyes. Sparks would occasionally appear around its body. At this moment, these sparks suddenly flourished. A somewhat hoarse and furious roar was emitted from Hanba's mouth. A hesitant expression appeared in its eyes. Clearly, it had also sensed the power of the soul formation set up by the 36 elders. However, Hanba only paused for a moment. Then, it raised its hands again. An indescribable heat suddenly appeared near the 36 elders. Swoosh, a layer of faint green light flashed and covered the elders. Several of the elders' skinny faces suddenly bulged with green veins and then disappeared. Seeing that its attack was blocked, Hanba became anxious again. Looking at the distant palace, it suddenly changed its direction and began to land on the ground as if it wanted to burrow into the ground. Unexpectedly, just as Hitorigami moved, 16 of the 36 elders also moved. They flew faster than Hitorigami, and in the blink of an eye, they landed below Hitorigami. Roar! Hitorigami saw these people blocking him, and he waved his hand again. These people's bodies emitted a green light again. Hitorigami's other hand grabbed at the air, and the green light was immediately torn apart. With a muffled bang, another elder's body exploded. The elders to the side didn't think that Hanba would be so strong that the soul formation of 30 people couldn't stop it. Their faces changed. However, the other elders didn't stop. One by one, they flew past Hanba's feet and shook their bone staffs. Wung wung, a strange buzzing sound came from the bone staffs. A huge green net appeared in front of the 15 elders and wrapped around Hanba. At the same time, the 16 elders who stopped in midair also waved their bone staffs. The green net that disappeared earlier appeared again and covered Hanba from the top to the bottom. Roar, seeing this, Hanba didn't dare to fly down anymore. Its entire body wanted to escape the range of the green net. Unfortunately, Hanba's flight was still too slow. He had only flown for about 100 feet before the green net began to close up like an inescapable net. The moment the green light came into contact with the net, a sizzling sound was immediately emitted. The brilliance of the light intensified, and the ghost head that had disappeared earlier appeared again with a ferocious expression. It pounced towards Hanba. Roar! Hanba was enraged. The red flames around its body also became brighter. Both of its hands waved continuously. The ghost heads that were pouncing towards it all flashed with a trace of fire and were completely destroyed. What was special was that the flames around Hanba's body were like golden flying swords. The ghost heads that were close to it were pierced through one by one. Amidst the heart-wrenching screams, the giant green net fell into the flames. Zzzlala, after a series of noises, the green net bound the flames out of thin air. At the same time, the flames that were previously revealed were covered. The flames actually became much thinner. What was special was that after the green net fell, each of the green lights started to swim. They were like thin pythons that coiled around Hanba's body. Roar! Hanba roared. Its entire body expanded. The flames also expanded as if it wanted to break free from the green light. Unfortunately, the 35 surviving elders waved their bone staffs at the same time. Countless green lights fell into the green net. As Hanba expanded, the green net also extended. There were no signs of it being destroyed. On the other hand, the flames around Hanba's body became even thinner. Although both of its hands were grabbing onto the green light and trying its best to tear it apart, every time it tore apart a green light, another green light would appear. Moreover, even more ghost heads appeared out of thin air. They were like flies that saw blood. They pounced on Hanba's body and opened their mouths, wanting to devour Hanba's essence blood. It's only Isoso. G-Man sneered from afar. He was about to wave the bone staff in his hand again. However, at this moment, two loud sounds came from the air around Hanba and G-Man. Ah? G-Man was shocked. She hurriedly looked towards the source of the sound. At this moment, Xiaohua had already opened his eyes. The spirit treasure soul lock that was imprisoning his body was currently emitting an intense sound. What was special was that the bone spikes that were pressing against Xiaohua's forehead and the back of his head were currently being restrained by a layer of dense green light. Furthermore, the green light was flashing more and more, gradually covering Xiaohua's head. The loud sound came from within the green light. Green seal text? G-Man was even more shocked when she saw it. She could clearly see that the flashing green light was the green seal text that was gradually forming. Furthermore, following the formation of the green seal text, a familiar sound gradually came out. This sound was like the sound of thunder, but also like the sound of flowing water. It came from afar and came closer. It stopped in her ears and was born in her heart. Not only that, following the sound, an indescribable feeling emerged from G-Man's heart. She looked at Xiaohua's surroundings in disbelief. Furthermore, following the sound, she looked towards the sky. The formation of the green seal text actually caused a phenomenon in the sky. Strands of dark clouds came from all directions and gradually gathered above Ho-Tu's stronghold. This. G-Man couldn't help but take in a breath of cold air. This was a divine ability that even she didn't have before. That's right, at this moment, Xiaohua had already gradually figured out the method to pronounce the green seal text. Within the mysterious dark clouds, the tiny green seal text overlapped one another and emitted a loud sound. This sound shook the soul lock's imprisonment and wanted to break it apart. Unfortunately, Xiaohua only had the cloud summoning rain talisman. This talisman didn't have any offensive power. Furthermore, Xiaohua's green seal text wasn't completely successful. Even if he wanted to break free from the soul lock's imprisonment, he still couldn't do so. Now, it even attracted G-Man's attention. G-Man was shocked and resentment appeared in her eyes. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. As she waved her bone staff, a green light appeared in her mouth. When the green light landed on the blood essence immediately exploded and turned into a ghost head. The ghost head screamed and rushed into Xiaohua's head. Following the disappearance of the ghost head, the green light around Xiaohua's head also gradually disappeared. The sound of the green seal text also gradually stopped and the dark clouds that filled the sky also slowly dispersed. Xiaohua's final struggle was also broken by G-Man. Sigh, Xiaohua sighed. He knew that he was already at his wit's end. G-Man's gaze coldly swept across the dejected Xiaohua, then he looked into the distance. The other loud sound just now came from where Hanba was. Hanba's body flashed with a red brilliance, and a huge illusory figure appeared from its body. It seemed to be formed by strange red runes, and it grew bigger and bigger. In the moment that G-Man imprisoned Xiaohua again, the phantom had already grown to more than 10 feet. The green light and ghost head that were binding Hanba was blocked by the phantom. The soul power of the 35 elders seemed to be insufficient to support the green light. As the light flickered, the phantom actually showed signs of collapsing. Hanba, as expected of great god Shibai's descendant. G-Man sighed. Her body flashed with a green light again. Like a green rainbow, she shot into the sky and appeared right above Hanba's phantom in the blink of an eye. Everyone's eyes were focused on G-Man. They wanted to see what she would do. However, G-Man simply stretched out her hand and a green light appeared at her fingertips. The moment this green light appeared, it was as bright as a star. It was even brighter than the rising sun. With some difficulty, G-Man pointed her finger and the green light landed on the phantom. Roar! As the green light entered his body, Hidorigami let out an extremely painful roar. The The shadow rapidly shrank, and the green light that bound Hidorigami's body rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, Hidorigami returned to his original form. The green shadow was like a giant python that bound Hidorigami tightly. Sigh, Xiao Mao sighed in his heart. He was also dejected. He looked at Xiao Hua and wanted to shake his head but couldn't move. He could only smile bitterly. Only Zi Ming's gaze was hesitant. She wanted to look at Xiao Hua but was also worried about Fairy Hongxia. However, there was clearly some worry in her eyes. This was because when Xiao Hua let out that loud noise, she had clearly heard the sound of the green seal text. Although she didn't know how Xiao Hua activated the talisman, she was very clear in her heart that activating this mysterious talisman consumed life essence. She should give the rejuvenation pill to Xiao Hua, but she couldn't move right now, so how could she take it out? However, when she saw that Xiao Hua's face was still the same, she was puzzled. Could it be that she heard wrongly? Hanba was captured by G-Man. Just like Xiao Mao and the others, its burly body struggled with all its might. The flames around its body were also faintly discernible. Unfortunately, the flames were extinguished as soon as they appeared. It seemed to have no effect on the green light. Hanba's hands were also waving nonstop. However, no matter what, it couldn't use the powerful bloodline power from before. Chapter 29:15. G-Man snorted coldly once again. With a point of his finger, Hidorigami immediately fell from the sky like a huge boulder. With a loud boom, it smashed into the foot of the mountain, shattering a huge boulder at the foot of the mountain. Watch this thing carefully, G-Man instructed. Turning around, he transformed into a streak of light and charged towards the hall. The 35 elders did not dare to be negligent. They descended from the air and surrounded Hanba. Green light was faintly discernible on their bone staffs. Clearly, they were on high alert. G-Man's figure appeared in front of the palace door. The bone staff glowed with green light again. G-Man waved his hand and the green light streaked across the sky like a sharp sword. A green crack appeared in the air in front of the palace door. This crack slowly split open and pulled to both sides. At the same time, the green light rolled up like a rolling curtain. Roar! The green light rolled up halfway. A roar came from the green light and the two green lights turned into a beast's head. The beast head became slightly more solid, then turned around and charged toward the two deathly white bone doors at the entrance of the palace. With a loud boom, the beast's head sank into the bone doors. The two bone doors glowed with green light and blood gradually appeared. It was like the blood in the netherworld sea. It flowed along the bone doors. When the entire bone doors were covered by the blood, G-Man opened his mouth and chanted in the Huda village's witchcraft language. A flight of stairs gradually appeared in the blood. It extended from the bone doors and extended to G-Man's feet. The blood gradually turned into a ferocious beast's head. It opened its bloody mouth and waited to devour the guests on the stairs. G-Man glanced at the stairs under his feet and slowly stepped onto it. The stairs changed and brought G-Man's body into the mouth of the beast head that was formed by the palace door. As for the guards, when they saw G-Man go, they quickly grabbed Xiao Mao and the others. Especially the guard who was freed from Xiao Hua's hands by using the green seal scripture. He kicked Xiao Hua fiercely a few times before grabbing Xiao Hua's neck and jumping up the stairs. The stairs were also strange. As the guards jumped up, the stairs suddenly widened. It did not feel crowded when the few of them stood together. Naturally, the rest of the people also stepped onto the stairs after the guards. Xiao Hua's face was facing down. He could only see the stairs constantly changing, followed by a blood-red color and the smell of blood. In the end, Xiao Hua saw a ground full of bones and skeletons. Plop! Xiao Hua was casually thrown to the ground like an object. Only now did he have the chance to raise his face and see the situation of this hall clearly. Just as Xiao Hua thought, the ancestral shrine of Huda village was this huge bone hall. There were no pillars in the center of the bone hall. The roof of the hall was made of bones and skeletons, and the floor was also made of bones and skeletons. In fact, it was not clear which was the floor and which was the roof. At the top of the hall was a blood-red curtain that blocked everyone's view. What was behind the curtain couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Not even soul sense or divine sense could see through it. G-Man quietly stood in front of the curtain. Her eyes stared at the blood-red curtain, and 2 traces of blood could be seen in her eyes. Cough cough. After everyone who could enter the ancestral shrine had entered, G-Man coughed twice, turned around, and raised her hand. It was the token of Senior Wu. With a cold voice, she said, "Everyone, you have all seen it." For the sake of G-Man's position, Zimming had schemed a lot. Not only did he use Huda Village's Hanba as bait to lure Xian, then he used Hanba's bloodline power to kill Xian. Furthermore, he had also leaked the secret of Meng Mountain to the cultivators of Dao Sect. As a cultivator of Dao Sect, this Xiaohua actually knows some witchcraft arts. This old woman really doesn't know how many secrets Zimming had leaked out. Zimming's evil deeds have already violated the teachings of our ancestors. Although he is the primary candidate for G-Man, this old woman has decided to send him back to the embrace of Hutu Great God, so that he can reflect on his actions. As for these cultivators of Dao Sect, they are the murderers of Xian. This old woman will also exterminate them to avenge Xian. After she finished speaking, G-Man turned around and faced the blood-red curtain. She knelt down, and a voice of yin and yang came out from her mouth. It seemed like she was praying, but also seemed like she was telling something. All the soul warriors and elders behind her also knelt down, and a similar voice came out from their mouths. Following these voices, strands of green light slowly appeared, and floated towards the blood-red curtain. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the green light on the blood-red curtain increased, and gradually formed a layer of green mist. At this moment, G-Man stood up from the ground and raised the token in her hand. The token flew into the air and rushed into the mist. With a buzzing sound, all of the mist was sucked in by the token. The token trembled for a moment, then turned into a strange beast head the size of a fist. The beast head suddenly opened its bloody mouth, and a beam of green light shot out, landing on the blood-red curtain. The curtain gradually opened, and a huge statue of Hutu Great God appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Wu, a series of strange high-pitched sounds came from the mouths of the Hutu stronghold's residents. Everyone piously knelt down again. The gigantic statue of a deity was floating in midair, and the 2 hands in front of it were holding 2 jade snakes in a hugging posture. There were many thumb-sized bone grains in front of the statue, and each bone grain was engraved with strange runes. These should be the sacrificial tablets of the Hutu stronghold's ancestors. These bone grains were densely packed, and they floated between the arms and the jade snakes, as if they had really returned to Hutu Great God's embrace. Below the statue, there was a small sacrificial table. The table wasn't empty, and besides a few flickering green candles, there was a furry thing lying lazily on the table. At this moment, the furry thing seemed to have been awakened by the noise. It poked its head out from the table, and it looked like a dog's head. However, as the dog's head poked out, a faint beam of light shot out from its mouth. As the light grew more and more sinister, wisps of blood-red light appeared in the air above the ancestral hall, and mournful cries could be heard. On top of the dog's head, the 2 sparkling eyes on its head swept across the soul cultivators, and a kind of fear that came from the soul cultivators' souls was born. Aside from a few old soul cultivators whose bodies were flashing with green light, the rest of the soul cultivators fell to the ground and bowed with trembling bodies. When G-Man saw that the dog had been awakened, she hurriedly bowed and began to chant some strange incantations. The black dog aimlessly glanced at the people kneeling before the offering table. Suddenly, its little nose wrinkled and its entire body trembled. With a whoosh, the black dog flew up from the offering table. Like a black lightning bolt, it rushed in front of the crowd. The people kneeling on the ground were like stones in a pond. They were so scared that they rolled around on the ground. It was as if they were extremely afraid of the black dog. However, to everyone's surprise, that black dog didn't pay attention to anyone. Instead, it obediently flew in front of Xiaohua, who was half lying on the ground. Woof 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 woof, a burst of joyful bark sounded. That black dog actually started to happily play around in the air. In the end, it actually landed on Xiaohua's shoulder, leaving everyone dumbstruck. This. G-Man looked at all of this in a daze. She knew that Ziming had already served this sacred beast for dozens of years. If she were to use Elder Wu's token in the ancestral hall, it would inevitably alarm the sacred beast. Perhaps, it would disrupt her plans. However, she already had a plan to deal with it. But what she never expected was that the sacred beast was indeed alarmed. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary alarm. But the one who alarmed the sacred beast wasn't Ziming, but that mysterious Xiao Hua. G-Man could clearly feel the sacred beast's ecstasy and attachment. Zhang Xiaohua? G-Man suddenly came to a realization. She once again looked at Xiaohua with an inconceivable gaze. This is the sword practitioner that the sacred beast is looking for. Zhang Xiaohua? Daddy. When the black dog landed on Xiaohua's shoulder, a voice emerged from the bottom of Xiaohua's heart. It made Xiaohua somewhat confused. But when the black dog's warm tongue licked his ear, Xiaohua's heart trembled. He hurriedly replied, You are Little Black? Daddy, Little Black replied. It happily leaped over Xiaohua's head and landed on his other shoulder. At this moment in the ancestral hall, everyone was stunned like clay statues. They forgot to fear and tremble. Even Ziming, who was extremely familiar with the sacred beast, was unable to react. Her thoughts were the same as G-Man's. She didn't know how Xiaohua became the flying sword-wielding Zhang Xiaohua that the sacred beast was talking about. Wu, Little Black happily jumped a few times. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't react, it angrily whimpered a few times. It opened its mouth and with a ha sound, a white light flashed. It spat on the dark green light that was binding Xiaohua. The moment the light touched the white light, it immediately melted. Sacred beast, G-Man hurriedly shouted. Immediately after, she uttered some incomprehensible shaman language, as if she was asking something. Who would have thought that at this moment, Little Black completely ignored G-Man? It immediately flew up from Xiaohua's shoulder and barked randomly. This? G-Man hesitated. She didn't need to communicate with the sacred beast. She also knew that the sacred beast wanted her to release Xiaohua. But if she released Xiaohua, Ziming would naturally be released as well. Then, how would she repay Ziyan's revenge? Woof woof, Little Black urged again. It seemed that it was already somewhat anxious. G-Man bit her lips tightly. The expression on her face changed several times. She was really somewhat unwilling. She finally made the decision. She was finally going to take revenge. But at this final stage, there was a variable that she couldn't resist. Could she let go? Kill? A trace of ominous light flashed through G-Man's eyes. Chapter 29:16. However, the ferocious glint in her eyes disappeared in a flash. G-Man did not dare to kill the Saint Beast even though she was confident. Because she wasn't confident and didn't dare to kill all the elders in the ancestral shrine. Moreover, she didn't dare to destroy the entire Hutu stronghold's foundation. Is it wrong for me to avenge Lua? Puttigat, why is she so unfair to me? G-Man clenched her fists and murmured to herself as warmth gushed out from her eyes. G-Man. A gentle voice came from the palace door in the distance. Elderwu? G-Man sniffed and looked over, only to see a slightly dark and skinny young man walking over from there. This young man looked very ordinary, but his eyes were extremely bright, like the twinkling stars of the morning. Moreover, this young man walked slowly, step by step in the air. His figure was faintly discernible, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of G-Man. Greetings, Elder Wu. G-Man didn't dare to be negligent and bowed. Everyone in the ancestral shrine also bowed with G-Man, and the respect in their eyes was even greater than when they saw Little Black. Woof 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 woof, only Little Black continued to bark in the air, not afraid of this young man. Hee. Elder Wu had a warm smile on his face as he reached out his hand and patted Little Black's head. Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. Then, Elder Wu pointed his finger, and a green light that was almost invisible to the naked eye appeared from his hand and landed on Xiaohua's body. The dozens of dark green pythons immediately disappeared. Immediately after, Old Wu made a grabbing motion with his hand, and the soul lock that bound Xiaohua also broke free from Xiaohua's body and landed in his hand. Finally, Old Wu frowned slightly, and with a flick of his right hand's middle finger, a ball of blood-red brilliance also flew out from Xiaohua's head and dissipated in the air. Xiaohua completely regained his freedom. He stood up from the ground and respectfully said, "Junior Xiaohua of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Senior." "Xiaohua? You're not Zhang Xiaohua?" Old Wu also seemed to be surprised as he looked at Xiao He. At this moment, Xiao He was very happy. He had already landed on Xiaohua's head and messed up Xiaohua's hair. Junior's name might be Zhang Xiaohua, but Junior's name is Xiaohua now. Xiaohua looked at Elder Wu's gentle expression and didn't hide anything, carefully replying, "Oh, I see." Nodding his head, Old Wu looked at Ziming, Fairy Hong Xia and the rest. Finally, he looked at G-Man who had yet to get up and asked, "G-Man, please get up. What's going on?" "I beg Elder Wu to make the decision and seek justice for my dead Lu." G-Man refused to get up and said in a sorrowful voice, "Jian, what's wrong? When did he return to Hudu Great God's embrace?" Elder Wu was also surprised and he hurriedly asked, "Of course it was Ziming's doing." G-Man said hatefully, "Otherwise, how could I tie her up and bring her to the ancestral hall? How could I alarm the sacred beast?" Elder Wu nodded his head slightly, glancing at Ziming. He didn't instruct G-Man to release Ziming and the rest, but asked indifferently, "Have you investigated?" "Yes, I have investigated, and Ziming has admitted it himself." G-Man replied, "I got it. Please get up." Elder Wu's expression didn't change. "Tell me the whole story. Now that we are in the ancestral hall, I may not have the authority to punish others. If Ziming really killed Ziyen, I will give Ziyen an explanation right here." "Yes, I thank Elder Wu." Hearing that, G-Man hurriedly got up and repeated the whole story. Then, she pointed her finger downwards and said, "The elders and guards were all present. I was afraid that there might be a mistake, so I brought them to the ancestral hall. If Elder Wu doesn't believe me, you can ask them." "All right." Elder Wu nodded his head, looked at Xiaohua and asked, "What G-Man said, do you admit it?" Xiaohua smiled and shook his head, replying, "Although most of what G-Man said is true, she got it wrong. The one who set the trap is Ziyen, not Ziming. Furthermore, this Ziyen is definitely not the Lu, that G-Man spoke of. He is Lu, who has been possessed by the devil. Ziming has solid evidence. Elder Wu only needs to take a look to know." "Wu has been possessed? This is impossible." Not only was Elder Wu stunned, even G-Man turned pale with fright and denied it. "Sigh, the devil's methods are getting more and more brilliant." Elder Wu was clearly starting to believe Xiaohua. With a sigh, he said to G-Man, "Release Ziming, this old man will question him." G-Man asked in disbelief, "Xiaohua, if Ziming has solid evidence, then previously." At this point, G-Man couldn't ask any further. She already understood that Ziming wouldn't give this evidence to her even if he had to risk his life. That was an extreme distrust of her. G-Man's face paled slightly, and she released Ziming, Fairy Hong Xia and the rest. Ziming ignored G-Man, bowing towards Elder Wu and said, "Boy greets Elder Wu. It's been hard on you." Elder Wu waved his hand and said, "Tell me everything that happened." Ziming replied, and told Elder Wu everything that happened after he left the Back Earth stronghold. He even told Elder Wu about Master Qin's death. In the end, Ziming stretched out his hand, and his index finger cut across his calf like a knife. With a flash of blood, the soul artifact that contained the devil's soul was taken out from his flesh, and he raised his hand to present it to Elder Wu. Seeing this soul artifact, G-Man's face turned even paler. She already understood that Ziming was telling the truth. Ziyen was no longer Ziyen. The one who killed Ziyen was the devil in this soul artifact, and Ziming could even be said to have avenged Ziyen. "G-Man, do you want to see it or me?" Elder Wu took the soul bead and instructed Ziming to heal his wounds, then asked G-Man, "Elder Wu, please see." G-Man shook her head slightly. This concubine wants to avoid suspicion. All right, Elder Wu didn't decline, and his starry eyes stared at the soul bead. A strand of green crystal came out from between his eyebrows and entered the soul bead. Traces of blood red seeped out from the soul orb and entered Venerable Wu's forehead through the crystal thread. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Venerable Wu finally retrieved the crystal thread and looked at G-Man with a complicated expression. Was this concubine wrong? G-Man couldn't help but ask, how many devil's minions are there in the back Earth stronghold? You were wrong. But it's good that you didn't make a big mistake. Elder Wu said lightly, and then his mouth moved a few times. G-Man heard, and couldn't help but be surprised. Elder Wu's face was also gloomy. He threw the soul bead in his hand, and it landed in front of Blackie. Xiaohua opened his mouth slightly, and with a ha sound, a white light came out of his mouth and sprinkled on the soul bead. A pitch-black shadow let out a mournful cry and was sucked into his stomach. After Blackie ate the devil's soul, he actually did the same thing as Goldie. He stretched his waist, and his blood-red tongue touched the corner of his mouth. Then he laid on Xiaohua's shoulder and seemed to be drowsy. Xiaohua looked at Blackie, and used his hand to stroke its smooth fur. He smiled and asked, Elder Wu, this junior's Blackie. This junior wants to take it away. Yes, although this is the sacred beast of our back Earth stronghold, it still came from the heavens. From the day it asked this old man to look for you, this old man knew that it would leave the back Earth stronghold. Elder Wu nodded slightly. Moreover, the sacred beast is a sacred beast because it was bestowed by the heavens. The sacred beast's whereabouts are arranged by the great God. How can we, the people, decide for the sacred beast? Many thanks, Elder Wu. Xiaohua smiled and temporarily placed Blackie in his arms. Farewell, sacred beast. Xiaohua said casually, but the elders of the back Earth stronghold did not dare to be negligent. Everyone knelt on the ground again. Thank you, great godhood, for your grace. As if it heard everyone's kowtows, Blackie actually poked its little head out from Xiaohua's arms. With a sound, it spat out a white light, and then shrank back. I've made you suffer. Elder Wu looked at Fairy Hong Xia and the rest and said kindly. Fairy Hong Xia and the rest hurriedly bowed. This junior greets Elder Wu. This is nothing. As long as we can clear Miss Ziming's grievances, we are already satisfied. Sigh, it's all because this old woman was too anxious and believed in slanderous words. G-Man also hurriedly said. Fairy Hong Xia and the rest glanced at the calm Ziming and quickly bowed. This matter is too much of a coincidence, and G-Man is also concerned about her family. This junior can understand. G-Man looked at Ziming's expression, and her heart sank. She knew that the family she had accumulated for dozens of years had been poured down like a torrential flood in less than a day. Ziming's heart had already built a strong dam, and no matter how hard she tried, it would be impossible for her to reach the same level as before. Sure enough, Ziming glanced at everyone and said calmly, Boy knows that he is not good at expanding, but he is good at protecting what he has built. He has never put the safety of the people of Meng Mountains aside. Furthermore, I don't care how others look at Boy. Boy only does what he thinks is right. It doesn't matter if you understand or misunderstand. Once something has happened, then we can never go back to how we were before. Elder Wu smiled, and an indescribable charm immediately appeared on his ordinary-looking face. He pointed his finger and said, Ziming is right, G-Man is also right. Everything that happened before today has turned into water. We can never go back to how we were before. A mistake is a mistake, and no amount of compensation can change what has been done wrong. Since we can admit our mistakes and never make the same mistake again, that is the right thing to do. How can we be completely right when we govern Wu Stockade? As long as we have the people in our hearts, we can handle things impartially, and we have a clear conscience. As for the mistakes that we can't go back to how we were before, let it be an eternal mistake. Let it be a lesson for us. Without the past, without the present, how can there be a future? Only when there is rain can there be a rainbow. Only then can we know the beauty of Meng Mountains. Hutu Stockade is one of the 12 great stockades of Meng Mountains. How could we have gone through such a simple storm? If we, the descendants of the great god Hudu, are defeated by such a trivial matter, wouldn't we become a joke to the original Taoist Shao of the country of Shi? Chapter 29:17. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. Venerable Wu and Ji-Man had mentioned his name twice in a row. That Ji-Man was still fine, but she should have sensed the situation with them. Since Venerable Wu of Bai Lu's stronghold could mention the name Taoist Shao, then Ji-Man could too. However, Venerable Wu was different. He had just returned from outside, and Ziming had told him that he was ordered by the Shaman King to go deep into Meng Mountains. How could he know so clearly? Thinking of Venerable Wu's situation, Xiao Huan naturally thought of Shui Mingcha of Sword Domain. Since she could also mention his name, although there was still some doubt in her tone, since she could think of it, how could the others not know? Since the sword cultivators knew, how could the cultivators of Dao sect not know? There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Perhaps the current nascent soul masters already know Wu Ming's origin. Looks like I'll have to seek advice from Han Zhu about my Buddhist cultivation. I'll see how I can conceal it better. Everything in Hutu stronghold and Meng Mountains was arranged by the great hands of Hutu great god and the other 12 great gods. It was all to temper and sharpen us, the descendants of the great gods. Only after going through the hardships of Hutu stronghold today can we understand the value of family, trust, and selflessness. Only after going through the drought of Meng Mountains can we understand the importance of hard work and toil, and the importance of Meng Mountains to us. Venerable Wu saw Xiao Hua frown and ignored him. He then said to Zi Ming and the others, all the disasters now have shown us that no matter if it's the demons, swordsmen, or cultivators, even the soul warriors and natives of Meng Mountains, they all have some unfathomable intentions. They always want to realize their own schemes and satisfy their own selfish desires. They treat the lives of billions of people in Meng Mountains as grass, and treat Meng Mountains as a chess piece. They even treat the world as their own slaughterhouse. This is something that we, the descendants of the 12 great gods, cannot tolerate. This destroys the tradition of our billions of people peacefully guarding Meng Mountains. Yes, we'll listen to Senior Shaman's instructions. When everyone heard this, they were all excited and cheered in unison. Even though there were still some sounds among these calls, and there were still some shaman language that Xiao Hua and the others couldn't understand. Obviously, Grandmaster Wu's words were meant for Xiao Hua and the others to hear. Then, Grandmaster Wu spoke again, but this time, Xiao Hua and the others couldn't understand the shaman language. Following Grandmaster Wu's orders, groups of guards were led out by the elders. In just a short while, only Grandmaster Wu, Ji-Man, Xiao Hua and the others were left in the ancestral hall. The current Hutu stronghold is in some trouble. I believe Taoist Master Xiao has already seen it. This old man was aware of this situation long ago and has already made preparations. However, I never thought that the devil cultivator's attack would be so intense that even Ziyan's body would be possessed. It seems that this old man will be busy for a while in the coming days. Grandmaster Wu said to Xiao Hua in a very amiable manner, therefore, I would like to ask Taoist Xiao to stay in my back earth village for a few days. After this old man has finished dealing with the secular affairs, I will discuss with Taoist Xiao. No problem, Xiao Hua smiled. Although this Grandmaster Wu looked very ordinary, but since he appeared in the ancestral hall, every action and word of his attracted everyone's gaze and attention. Furthermore, Grandmaster Wu's words were neither hot nor cold, and were extremely pleasant to the ears. His fairness and strictness were self-evident, which made Xiao Hua's heart filled with admiration. Xiao Hua naturally took this kind of senior's words to heart. He bowed and said, Junior and the others will listen to Senior's arrangements. Ji-Man, follow this old man to the back earth palace. Grandmaster Wu nodded and ordered Ji-Man. Ji-Man also replied respectfully, yes, this concubine understands. Zi Ming, now that you have repaired the soul-falling lamp, and Ziya's matter has also been settled, rest for a day and then come to the back earth palace. Grandmaster Wu looked at Zi Ming, who was in a daze and looking straight at the ground, and said, Zi Ming's situation seemed to be very emotional about Grandmaster Wu's words, and he actually didn't hear Grandmaster Wu's order clearly. After Grandmaster Wu finished speaking, he suddenly understood and asked curiously as if he had just woken up from a dream, "Boy? Boy, why are you going to the Back Earth Palace?" Ha! Grandmaster Wu laughed and didn't say another word. He raised his feet and walked away like a shadow. Ji-Man looked at Zi-Ming apologetically, and a trace of a bitter smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, and also walked out of the ancestral hall. Zi-Ming looked at the backs of the two people leaving, and an extremely complicated expression appeared on his face. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. What should have happened had happened, and what should have been said had been said. It seemed that what happened before was different from before, but thinking carefully, what changed? What didn't change? Zi-Ming. Xiaohua's voice sounded in Zi-Ming's ears. Grandmaster Wu is right, yesterday is yesterday, today is today, and tomorrow is tomorrow. You still have to think carefully. This concubine understands. It's easy to say, but when it comes to doing, how can it be so simple to truly understand? Zi-Ming looked at Xiaohua with a bitter smile. Fairy Hongxia was originally dissatisfied with Zi-Ming, but at this moment, she felt pity in her heart, and said softly, "Sigh, life is always unpredictable, and the joys and sorrows of separation are the main taste. Miss Zi-Ming, your heart must be strong." As she spoke, Fairy Hongxia also looked at Li Zongbao. Ever since Li Zongbao used the netherworld mirror and didn't see Kai Zhuoxia's image, he hadn't said a word. Even when he was captured by Ji-Man, he didn't say a word, and didn't resist at all, as if he had lost his soul. Fairy Hongxia's words were meant for Li Zongbao to hear. Unfortunately, Li Zongbao still looked at the ground indifferently, and ignored her. "Io Xiaohua." At this moment, Zi-Ming suddenly cried out, and took out the rejuvenation pill, and handed it to Xiaohua. "Quickly take the rejuvenation pill. Quickly replenish your life essence." What? Fairy Hongxia was also anxious, and asked curiously, "Xiaohua, when did you?" However, Fairy Hongxia hesitated when she saw Xiaohua's face. She had seen Grandmaster Qin-Qin's condition after she entered the soul-refining cave, and knew what it was like to have one's life essence damaged. At this moment, Xiaohua's face was glowing, and there wasn't a single wrinkle on his face. No matter how she looked at it, it didn't look like his life essence was damaged. Is that so? Xiaohua actually didn't feel anything. He was forced to do it, and his life was almost gone, so what was the point of wanting his life essence? Moreover, he was only able to use half of the cloud-summoning rain spell before it was sealed by Ji-Man, and the green seal text was not completely released. As for whether this spell could damage his life essence, Xiaohua didn't know. Touching his smooth cheeks, he was a little dazed. Using half of a spell, can it damage my life essence? Xiaohua thought for a while and asked. Of course, Zi-Ming was a little anxious and urged, "Witchcraft is the essence of heaven and earth, how can we mortals use it? We can only rely on life essence to replenish the heaven and earth essence consumed by witchcraft. Not to mention using half of it, as long as it is used, it will be damaged." "But I don't feel anything." Xiaohua smacked his lips. "Why don't we wait a little longer? This rejuvenation pill is also quite precious." Zi-Ming was about to cry, and stamped her feet. "Young Master Xiao, I'm not joking with you. The taboo power of my Meng Mountain's witchcraft is not something you know. That is the power of a great god, not the magic power of a cultivator, and not some spell formed by heaven and earth's spiritual energy." All right. Seeing Zi-Ming in a hurry, Xiaohua quickly caught the rejuvenation pill, and said, "How about this? I'll take the rejuvenation pill first. I'll see when the life essence starts to be damaged, and when there is something wrong, I'll immediately take the rejuvenation pill. Switch. I'll also know how powerful that witchcraft is, right?" "Alright. Young Master Xiao can decide for yourself." Zi-Ming helplessly shook her head, but a moment later, she thought of something, and said in a low voice, "What was the witchcraft spell that young Master Xiao used just now? When did young Master cultivate it? This witchcraft spell, even my Huda village's elder Wu can't use it." "It's a long story," Xiaohua said with a smile. "This is the spell evolved from my cloud-summoning rain talisman." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish, Ziming was shocked, and said involuntarily, Isn't this great god Xianming's rain-summoning technique? I don't know. Xiao Hua said with a smile, but I got it from somewhere in Meng country. This witchcraft spell can't attack, but young master risked his life to activate it. I'm afraid it's useless. Ziming sighed. Xiao Hua said in all seriousness, even so, at that time, this Xiao couldn't just surrender without putting up a fight. It's all my fault for dragging young Master Xiao and the others into danger. Ziming blamed herself again. I'm afraid Ji-Man will think that I leaked the secret of Meng Mountain. Hearing this, Xiao Hua shook his head and said, Ziming, Elder Wu's words are very good. You go back and reflect on it. I won't say anything. Xiao and the others came to Meng Mountain. According to you soul cultivators, it was Hutu Great God who sent us here. Even this witchcraft spell was instructed by Hutu Great God. If it's related to you, it was Hutu Great God who sent you to Sentry City and let you get to know me. All the cause and effect originated from Hutu Great God. I understand. Ziming smiled slightly. Taoist Zhao's trip to Meng Mountain is very important to the people of Meng Mountain. Judging from Elder Wu's expression just now, it's far from the distress when the drought just started. I'm sure you already know how powerful Taoist Xiao is. That's right, this Xiao has a hard life. Xiao Hua shrugged his shoulders casually with a pitiful appearance. Ziming laughed. He was really happy now. Let's go. Fairy Hong Xia's heart skipped a beat, and she urged, Elder Wu has already asked Ziming to go to Hutu Palace. It's also a chance for Ziming. Let's rest early and let Ziming have some peace. Ziming lowered his head, and Xiao Hua acted as if he didn't hear it. Xiao Mao said tactfully, That's right, I've been tortured by Ji-Man. Even my mother's portrait is only half done. I still have to finish it while I'm free. Chapter 29:18. Young Master Xiao, please. Ziming lowered her head. Her ears were burning as she quickly walked in front of him. Her feelings for Xiao Hua were actually not that deep. It was only because no one was able to enter her eyes. Xiao Hua's temperament was completely different from the millions of Meng Mountain spirit warriors, and he did not have the slightest bit of flattery. That was why he immediately entered her heart. Today's experience, which could not be considered a lingering and frightening experience, had deepened her impression of him, making it somewhat hazy. This hazy feeling had always been a secret, and she did not want Fairy Hong Xia to know about it. However, Ji-Man had pointed it out. Now that Fairy Hong Xia was on guard, she naturally felt embarrassed. Oh right, Ziming, there is something that I feel is strange about. I would like to ask a few more questions. Xiao Hua spoke again at an inappropriate time, causing Fairy Hong Xia to stare at him with a bit of anger and embarrassment. Young Master Xiao, please speak. Ziming lowered her head slightly and looked up slightly, asking in a low voice. Regarding Ziyan, I am somewhat puzzled. I have always wanted to ask about it. Xiao Hua did not care about this, and spoke out the doubts in his heart. Ziyan was possessed by a demon, so he did not fall. Perhaps his natal spirit tablet would not shatter. However, Hanba killed Ziyan, and Miss Ziming took away the demon's remnant soul. Does that mean that the natal spirit tablet would not shatter before the soul was destroyed? Why did Ji-Man not know about this? Why did she only make things difficult now? Oh, so this is what young Master Xiao is puzzled about. Ziming understood and smiled. That natal spirit tablet is only a magic of your Dao sect. There is nothing similar among Meng Mountain spirit cultivators. Oh? Why not? If you had this item, you and Ji-Man, wouldn't there be so many misunderstandings? Xiao Hua asked in astonishment. Ziming's face was slightly pale. She said indifferently, if we had this item, the incident with Ziyi would not have happened. After thinking for a moment, Ziming said, I believe young Master Xiao already knows about the power of bloodline. It is the foundation of Meng Mountain spirit cultivators' spirit techniques. And I know a little. Xiao Hua nodded. Master Kachin had already told him about this. Simply speaking, the power of bloodline is to use the power of heaven and earth through the inheritance of blood essence. The blood essence must contain the imprint of a soul warrior. Ziming said, although your Dao Sect's Dharma spells don't talk about this, the natal spirit tablet that can be refined with blood essence should also belong to this category. A drop of blood essence isn't much to you Dao Sect cultivators, but to us soul warriors, it's incomparably important. A soul warrior can use countless methods to use blood essence to cast spells on another soul warrior, and even take the life of that soul warrior. Therefore, it is impossible for us, the soul warriors of Meng Mountains, to use our own blood essence to craft some natal spirit tablet and let others control our life and death. Actually, a simpler explanation would be that since the death of a Dao Sect cultivator could cause the destruction of his natal spirit tablet, the destruction of his natal spirit tablet would definitely cause the death of a Dao Sect cultivator. Your Dao Sect's natal spirit tablet is the most important method that cultivation sects use to control their own disciples. It's not the concern for their own disciples that ordinary people think. Let me say something unpleasant. If my Meng Mountains were to attack your Dao Sect's 3 kingdoms, we don't even need to fight to the death. As long as we can control your Jade Archive Palace, we can completely control all of your cultivators. Hiss. Hearing this, not only was Xiao Hua dumbfounded, even Fairy Hong Xia and the others sucked in a breath of cold air. Xiao Hua even thought of the golden natal spirit tablet that he kept in the Jade Archive Palace. Dao Sect cultivators are like locusts in the mortal world, desperately devouring the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, using everything in the world for their own use. Moreover, they plunder by hook or by crook, not caring about the needs and nourishment of heaven and earth. Today's abnormal weather in Meng Mountains, I'm afraid it's the result of your Dao Sect's 3 kingdoms ignoring the heavenly Dao, right? Ziming sighed. It's a pity that you cultivators don't know about it at all. Moreover, you're so arrogant, thinking that you're the orthodox sect. The people of the world are also short-sighted. When they see how powerful the Dao Sect spells are, they naturally follow suit. Therefore, our soul cultivators have declined, and our Confucian cultivators have died out. At this point, Ziming saw that Xiao Hua and the others' expressions were not good. She smiled and said, "This is what Venerable Wu said on a normal day. I'm just listening. Now that I'm telling you, young Master Xiao, you may not necessarily take it seriously." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Looking at Fairy Hong Xia and the others who were also thinking about something, he didn't know how to answer. As they spoke, they walked out of the ancestral hall. With a glance, they saw the tall and sturdy Hitorigami standing on top of a boulder. The Hitorigami seemed to have received Venerable Wu's orders and didn't make a fuss. When it saw Xiao Mao, it roared and flew down from the boulder. The ground where its feet landed turned yellow. With a smile on his face, Xiao Mao stretched out his hand. The Hitorigami also stretched out its big hand. 2 fingers touched Xiao Mao's hand. Xiao Mao whispered a few words, and the Hitorigami laughed happily. Then, its body glowed red, and it flew into the sky again. The Hitorigami is very powerful. Unfortunately, it still can't control its own strength. Xiao Mao looked regretfully at the place where the Hitorigami was standing. There were already some fine grains of sand. He said, "Otherwise, with it following us, it could have saved us a lot of trouble. It's a pity that you can't bring it out of?" Xiao Hua said casually, but stopped halfway. "Yes, why can't I bring it out of Million Meng Mountains?" "Yes, Million Meng Mountains is the Hitorigami's home. I won't let it leave. Moreover, if it goes to the cultivation world, who knows if it will attract the attention of nascent soul or spirit-severing stage seniors." Xiao Mao said with a smile. He then took out the jade scroll in his hand and immersed his divine sense in it. Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked at the terrifying mountains on the left. He then looked at Fairy Hong Xia and said, "This? I'm afraid this is where the earliest Huda stockade was located?" "Yes, it is." Ziming waited for a moment. Seeing that Fairy Hong Xia didn't say anything, she slowly said, "According to the shaman canon, the earliest Huda stockade only had an ancestral temple. Moreover, the ancestral temple wasn't as big as it is now. Later, it slowly expanded. The palaces and other things were built around the ancestral temple. When the back mountain was full, This was another large-scale construction in my previous life. Previously, I've said that the buildings in the front mountain were heavily influenced by Confucian cultivation. It's already different from the back mountain. Confucian cultivation, what should it look like? Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He thought of the turtle shell, the core, and the inscriptions on the armor. Outside the ancestral shrine, there were naturally guards standing guard. Ziming looked at the guards and gave a few orders. Then she whispered to Xiaohua and the others, "This concubine's resting place is near the ancestral shrine. This concubine won't see you off." "Yes, Miss Ziming, please have some peace." Xiaohua didn't dare to say more. "We'll also go back and meditate. When Elder Wu finishes dealing with the matters of Hutus Decade, we'll meet again." "All right." Ziming smiled and was about to turn around. Fairy Hongxia said again, "Miss Ziming, you have to pay more attention to the matters of Hutus Decade. After all, you're the next G-man. The task on your shoulders is very heavy. The people of Hutus Decade are all depending on you." Ziming's heart ached. She knew what Fairy Hongxia wanted to say. She smiled bitterly. "Thank you, sister. I know what I'm doing." After saying that, she smiled at everyone. Then, she turned and walked along the wide mountain path towards the hall beside the ancestral temple. Her figure looked so lonely in the wind. "Sai, let's go." Xiaohua sighed. Although it's G-Man and the Hutus Decade is above everyone else, the hardships involved can't be compared to the freedom of being a cultivator. "But, do you want to share the burden?" Fairy Hongxia asked with a smile that didn't look like a smile. "Don't, please don't." Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand. "This Xiao has a lazy personality. This kind of thing should be left to the ambitious. It's just sharing the burden. Why don't you try?" Fairy Hongxia didn't give up. "I'm very eager." Xiaohua's face turned serious. "This Xiao is a cultivator. How can I get involved in the affairs of millions of soul cultivators in Meng Mountain? Besides, this Xiao is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. If I want to share the burden, it's the affairs of my myriad Thunder Valley. How can I split myself here?" "Hee Xiaohua. What's that talisman of yours? It looks like a soul spell, right?" Fairy Hongxia laughed. "Besides, didn't you lose that Dharma body of yours? When you find it, let it come to Hutus Decade. Just treat it as if you're here. Isn't this the best of both worlds?" "Oh right, speaking of this." Xiaohua didn't seem to hear her. He raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "Hongxia, don't you think it's strange? Why can't we find Kai Zhuoxia's soul? I was the one who brought her corpse back with my own hands. Besides, didn't you say that you buried her? You buried her with your own hands. How could she still be alive?" Fairy Hongxia's heart clenched. She nodded and said, "That's right. Unless the one who died wasn't elder sister?" Hearing that he had successfully changed the topic, Xiaohua's heart relaxed. He looked at Li Zongbao and said, "I saw Kai Zhuoxia's death with my own eyes. Besides, the corpse that I brought back was seen by the head of your Kai family. Everyone was certain that it was her. How can it not be her?" "Then, where did the problem go wrong?" Fairy Hongxia scratched her head. "Unless elder sister really isn't dead? But at that time, she was completely lifeless and suffered such heavy injuries. Until the time of the burial, this concubine had repeatedly probed but didn't find anything strange. If there was even a trace of warmth, this concubine wouldn't have. Senior brother Li, what do you think?" Xiaohua turned to look at Li Zongbao and asked. "Back to Liang, this Majia wants to see it with my own eyes." Li Zongbao raised his head. His eyes were red as he said word by word. Previously this Majia didn't dare to admit it and didn't dare to face it. But now that Zhuoxia is still alive, this Majia has been enlightened. Since this Majia has her in my heart, I should admit it in front of the whole world. This way, even if she died, she would be able to rest in peace. Perhaps she is waiting for this Majia to visit her. Chapter 29:19. This. Xiaohua was slightly shocked. He was afraid that Li Zongbao had gone mad. He had seen Kai Zhuoxia's death with his own eyes. She was really dead and could not be alive. Since the netherworld mirror could not find traces of Kai Zhuoxia's soul, there must be something wrong with the netherworld mirror. Wasn't there a problem when he used it? It must be because Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia used it that something happened. Yes, I am also in a hurry to go back and see my sister's body. Who knows, a miracle might really happen. Fairy Hongxia's face was also filled with excitement. Li Zongbao also bit his lips and said, yes, since Ziming wants to revive Zai, if Zhuoxia is not dead, there is no reason why she can't be revived. This. Xiaohua smiled bitterly again. He looked at Xiao Mao, who was walking with his head down and seemed to be immersing his divine sense into the jade slip. He could not say anything. It seemed that only he, the culprit who broke the netherworld mirror, did not get anything from the netherworld mirror? Yes, what is that huge black silhouette? What is that series of sounds? Xiaohua was puzzled. Is it the netherworld? Or the 9 springs? Or the 10,000 demon realm? The demon realm? Xiaohua and the others returned to the quiet room with doubts in their hearts. However, this quiet room wasn't the enormous palace from before, and it was a small and exquisite room instead. Presently, only Xiaohua was seated cross-legged in this room. Thinking about how so many things had happened in just one day and one night after leaving the quiet room, Xiaohua was almost exhausted. Most of his mental energy was on the sounds of the green seal text. If it was not a matter of life and death, even if he had started dozens of days ago or even decades ago, Xiaohua did not believe that he would have made the most crucial progress in such a short period of time. Therefore, Xiaohua sat cross-legged quietly. He did not think or do anything. He simply meditated, and in a moment, he entered a dream. Although Xiaohua was asleep, the primordial spirit in Qingshan heaven was still waving the soul strands and trying different sounds. Strands of green light were constantly produced, and strange sounds were constantly emitted. Similar to the situation in Qingshan heaven, in Xiaohua's dream, there were also green lights fluttering. The green seal script that was born in the white bone previously turned into butterflies that gracefully entered the dream. Of course, whatever you think about in the day, you will also have dreams. The emergence of the green seal script inexplicably stimulated the primordial spirit and the soul strands. From the earliest formless green seal script to the later green seal script gradually emerged in an orderly manner. It actually became a kind of faint music that reverberated throughout the entire clear spirit heaven. When it was deep into the night, the energy of the outer realm Yuan star broke free from the confinement of the sun star and shot out from the starry night, enveloping Xiaohua within it. After the appearance of the outer realm Yuan star force, about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Elder Wu flashed out of the sky like a ghost. His starry eyes were even brighter in the night, and after strands of green light flashed, he had a strange expression on his face. That expression seemed to have some understanding, but it was also astonishment. This astonishment seemed to have more confusion than understanding. Elder Wu softly muttered a few inaudible words of shaman language, then slightly shook his head, and his figure slowly disappeared again. Dream. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Xiaohua suddenly woke up. Cold sweat seeped out from his forehead, and all the green seal text in his dream came to an abrupt end. It was completely shattered by the inexplicable words of the pitch-black giant monster's outline. Sigh. Xiaohua looked left and right, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. He thought to himself, is this dream my family? Why do I care so much about it? But if it really wants to come, why is there no sign of it? Thinking of this, Xiaohua sneered again. Since nameless identity is going to be revealed, then the person who sealed my Naiwan palace will definitely appear. My amnesia must be related to them. The day when the truth comes to light is gradually approaching. Unfortunately, my nameless is only at the early nascent soul stage. My Naiwan palace and Middle Dantian are sealed so tightly, it's definitely not the work of a nascent soul cultivator. If it's not a spirit-severing cultivator, then it's a void refinement cultivator, or even a body fusion cultivator. Damn it, this won't do. If I meet them now, I can only be a fish on the chopping block, not a knife. I have to think of a way. Thinking of this, Xiaohua suddenly stared blankly, as if he thought of something. He forcefully slapped his forehead with his hand and said, "Damn it, how could I forget? When Kaijwisha died, she died a cold death. But when I was in Liang's Kai family, didn't I use that strange willow branch to summon the soul? That broken willow branch is really strange. All the spiritual herbs in the space grow crazily, but this willow branch hasn't changed at all after so many years." Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's mind entered the space, and from the edge of the yin-yang pool, he took out the willow branch again. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over it, and he bitterly smiled, but he saw that the willow branch was still abnormally dry, and the dried surface was dotted with yellow spots, no different from before. Especially the 9th-grade willow leaf, it didn't increase or decrease, and even the withered yellow lines on the willow leaf didn't change at all. In the end, is this thing causing trouble again? Xiao Hua lost confidence, but from the surface, this thing was just an ordinary willow branch. If it wasn't for the fact that it didn't change in Xiao Hua's space, and if it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Hua spent dozens of high-grade spirit stones to buy this treasure, Xiao Hua would have thrown this willow branch away long ago, right? Maybe it's useful? Xiao Hua's eyes turned a few times, and he secretly said, "This Ho-Tu village's Elder Wu is obviously an expert. His cultivation is simply unfathomable. Moreover, shamans have always been proficient in soul techniques. If this thing can protect Kaijwisha's soul, it's obviously one of the few powerful things in the world, even more powerful than the soul-falling lamp. Elder Wu should know." However, Xiao Hua only had this thought, and he immediately extinguished it, and hurriedly sent the willow branch back into the space, and still stuck it in the yin-yang pool. There are many treasures in the world, and Xiao Hua didn't know how many of them can protect the soul, but Xiao Hua knew. Elder Wu calmly dealt with the dispute between Ji-Man and Zi-Ming, and easily cleared the Ho-Tu village of the demon invasion. That was because Elder Wu had absolute control over the Ho-Tu village. In this control, Wu wouldn't care too much about any unforeseen events. However, if this willow branch entered Elder Wu's eyes, and if it exceeded what Elder Wu could bear, would Elder Wu become greedy? Xiao Hua boasted that he already had a lot of rare treasures, but when he saw an excellent magical treasure, his heart would still itch. Xiao Hua himself was like this. What about others? Xiao Hua couldn't guarantee that Elder Wu wouldn't make other moves. Forget it, this kind of treasure is related to life and death. It's better for this young master to know. Xiao Hua thought to himself, and then raised his eyes to look outside the quiet room. At this moment, the quiet room had just lit up, as if another day had come. It's already been dozens of days, right? Elder Wu still hasn't come. I'm afraid the Ho-Tu village's crisis is really serious this time. Sai, this devil dweller, is really everywhere. I don't know if these demons are related to Yin Meng and the others. Suddenly, Xiao Hua felt that the millions of Meng mountains blocking the northwest side of the Xiaoyu continent was really disgusting, but now, he felt that it was incomparably cute. If it weren't for the millions of Meng mountain soul cultivators, perhaps Zhang Qingshao would have already been captured by Lord Ji Peng, right? I better hurry up and cultivate. When Xiao Hua thought of Lord Ji Peng, his heart trembled again. He knew that this kind of cruel and merciless demon general would appear in front of him sooner or later. After such a long period of recovery, under the miraculous effect of the sun shroud art, Xiao Hua's burned divine sense had recovered. Moreover, this divine sense had become even more tenacious, thick, and enormous. Although it couldn't be compared to the Buddhist sense, Xiao Hua had a feeling that as long as he kept cultivating the sun shroud art and strengthening his mind, this divine sense would soon surpass the Buddhist sense. While sighing with emotion at the miraculous secret technique given by Jiuxia, Xiao Hua once again erased Jiuxia's face from his mind, and sent his mind into the mysterious dark cloud. At this moment, the mysterious dark cloud was different from before. In the short period of time that Xiao Hua had controlled the green seal text, some strange runes had appeared outside the mysterious dark cloud. These runes were faintly floating outside the dark cloud, appearing and disappearing. Every time a rune appeared, a faint green glow would flash. This green glow would pass from one rune to another, and then disappear along with the disappearance of the rune. When another rune appeared, the green light would appear again. Slowly, This green light ran through the entire surface of the mysterious dark cloud, and those strange runes also gradually covered the entire mysterious dark cloud. Xiaohua had always been interested in runes. Seeing that it was so strange, he had already focused his mind on these runes. However, these runes either suddenly disappeared when they came into contact with his mind, or they disappeared before his mind could even approach them. Xiaohua's mind was unable to capture them. When Xiaohua coincidentally encountered a newly formed rune, a kind of boundless feeling immediately came from that rune. Compared to this boundless feeling, Xiaohua's mind was like a grain of sand in the vast ocean, insignificant and undetectable. See, Xiaohua suddenly realized, this might be the heavenly pattern earth deed that protects the soul. Immediately, Xiaohua's greedy thoughts appeared again. Damn it, if I can comprehend this heavenly pattern earth deed, then how good would that be? Unfortunately, Xiaohua had only encountered it for a moment, and after that, he didn't have anything else. Even if he wanted to encounter it again, it was impossible. Opportunity. Xiaohua understood that it was impossible and regretfully entered the mysterious dark cloud. The moment Xiaohua's mind entered, the heavenly pattern earth deed suddenly flashed outside the mysterious dark cloud, as if it wanted to resist. When it lightly touched Xiaohua's mind again, that flash was extinguished, and the heavenly pattern earth deed returned to its previous state of flickering. Chapter 29:20. Wow, Xiaohua had just entered the heaven ring of Qi when the originally cold and desolate heaven ring of Qi fluttered in all directions. Sounds that seemed to shake the heavens and earth constantly resounded in the heaven ring of Qi. The outlines of mountains and rivers could be faintly seen, and traces of clouds and rain also appeared in midair. The green seal script is divine, able to steal the essence of heaven and earth, causing changes in heaven and earth. The 12 great gods are able to move heaven and earth and weep ghosts and gods, as expected. Xiaohua exclaimed in amazement. He had always thought that the Dao Sect's spells could reach the heavens. Although Zi Ming, Master Qin Qin, and the others had already explained the magical powers of soul spells, Xiaohua still felt that it was impossible. After all, he had only cultivated to the second day of the 9 heavens of spirit origin, far away from becoming a shaman. Even if he could comprehend the green seal script, how could he have the ability to reach the heavens? But everything in front of him was telling him that soul cultivation was really different from Dao cultivation. The pure green seal script had nothing to do with cultivation. At this moment, he really had the possibility of reaching the heavens. After entering the clear God sky, the deafening sounds became even louder. The entire clear God sky seemed to be in a state of chaos. Not only was Xiaohua's primordial spirit busy waving the soul strands to try to comprehend more green seal scripts, even the soul of the little white dragon was roaring like a dragon dancing in the 9 heavens. And what made Xiaohua the happiest was that the little white dragon and his primordial spirit were already close to the peak of the clear God sky. The waves of commotion caused the gloomy sky of the clear God sky to shake open little by little. One by one, the green seal scripts that seemed to have spirituality rushed into the sky from time to time, and there were even soul strands that had completely penetrated into the chaotic space. Good, Xiaohua was overjoyed and thought to himself, so the cultivation of the 9 heavens of spirit origin is not just a method of dancing, day-night moon, and so on. Even if it's comprehending the green seal script, cultivating charms is also one of the methods. According to Xiaohua's knowledge, there should be 365 basic green seal characters. He had learned 3 when he was making sorcerer puppets, and he had acquired 36 from the Misty Clouds martial school. There were 4 on White Bone's left-hand bone. Adding the tens of green seal characters he had acquired earlier, he should have nearly 70 green seal characters. Recently, he had acquired another 100 green seal characters from the Sorcerer's Codex. Excluding the duplicates, he still had about 130 green seal characters. To use the moving clouds and summoning rain technique, only 36 characters were needed. These 36 characters were something that Xiaohua had just completely comprehended. Among these 36 characters, some were the green seal text of the clear spirit sky, some with a green seal text of the surrounding Qi sky, and some with a green seal text of the surrounding Qi sky. There were even a few that Xiaohua did not know which sky they were from. All of a sudden, Xiaohua had a strange feeling. The green seal text must be comprehended from the most basic level. Don't bite off more than you can chew, don't be greedy. The 12 great gods used these 365 green seal characters to pass down the teachings of heaven and earth. Just now, in the surrounding Qi sky, although I haven't fully comprehended the 50 green seal characters that belong to the surrounding Qi sky, the entire surrounding Qi sky already has the image of heaven and earth. What if I completely comprehend it? Thinking about this, Xiaohua forcefully suppressed his ecstasy. His primordial spirit began to slowly comprehend the first green seal character revealed in the Sorcerer's Codex. Sure enough, following the sound of the seemingly right but actually wrong green seal character, Xiaohua fell into the surrounding Qi sky. An indescribable feeling entered his mind, a feeling of missing out on an opportunity. Tao is one, one gives birth to two, two gives birth to three, three gives birth to all things. Tao gives birth to two extremes give birth to four divisions give birth to 8 trigrams give birth to 10,000 things, 10,000 things form heaven and earth. Damn it, now in this place of chaos, isn't Tao giving birth? Alas, that primordial spirit has already entered the clear spirit sky. Even if it comes back, it won't be able to. I've suffered a great loss. Xiaohua suddenly felt as if his soul had left his body. What should I do? Looking at some indescribable things gradually appearing in the surrounding Qi sky, Xiaohua was extremely disappointed. That's right, this young master's primordial spirit can't come back, but there are other primordial spirits in other places. Thinking about this, Xiaohua no longer dared to hesitate. He hurriedly rushed his mind out of the mysterious dark clouds and immediately returned to the space. Within the space, the nascent soul that had previously comprehended cultivation methods was now exerting all its strength to wield the Dharma seal. Streams of samadhi true fire were swimming up and down the three-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace, similar to when Xiaohua first refined pills. Moreover, a faint medicinal fragrance had already gushed out from the pill furnace. Clearly, Xiaohua's primordial spirit could already refine the simplest Wu Tsang pill. If he had enough time, his primordial spirit could also refine high-grade pills such as the Peiyuan pill, Foundation Establishment pill, and so on. However, at this time, how could Xiaohua care about refining pills and refining tools? He hurriedly urged his primordial spirit out of the space and recklessly rushed into the mysterious dark clouds. Naturally, the heavenly pattern earth deed in the mysterious dark clouds also flashed with a green brilliance, allowing the primordial spirit to safely enter. Slowly comprehend it. Xiaohua's mind instructed. After Xiaohua's primordial spirit heard this, it very quietly sat in the heaven ring of Qi. The indescribable thing in the heaven ring of Qi also had a strange fluctuation that slowly spread to the primordial spirit. The primordial spirit formed bit by bit in the heaven ring of Qi, and a kind of déjà vu feeling was born in the heaven ring of Qi. Moreover, the dancing primordial spirit in the heaven ring of Qi had also changed. It was completely dancing with soul strands. Each strand of soul strand was emitting an extremely simple and completely identical rhythm. A green seal character that Xiaohua had never comprehended before flashed with this brilliance and gradually appeared in the entire heaven ring of Qi. However, this first green seal character didn't seem to be less difficult to form because Xiaohua was already able to use the cloud-traveling rain-summoning talisman. Xiaohua's mind stayed in the heaven ring of Qi for a long time. He only heard a rumbling sound. The entire heaven ring of Qi was filled with green light, but the green seal character didn't appear smoothly. Forget it. This Tao begets one. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Let my primordial spirit slowly play with you. Xiaohua understood the difficulty of this green seal character and withdrew his mind from the heaven ring of Qi. Then, Xiaohua placed his attention on Master Qin Qin's soul cultivation equipment refining technique. After all, Xiaohua had broken the spirit treasure nether passage mirror of Ho Tu stronghold, which had a huge impact on Ziming. He also wanted to see if he could repair this nether passage mirror. However, the soul cultivation equipment refining technique was very different from the Dao Sect's equipment refining technique. Before Xiaohua could see any clues, a guard came to invite Xiaohua, Fairy Hong Xia and the rest under the orders of Wu Lao. This time, the hall that Wu Lao was in was different from the one that Xiaohua had seen before. It was at the back of the mountain, beside the ancestral shrine. It was a hall that was somewhat similar to the Huai Xian pavilion that Ji-Man was in. However, this hall did not look as elegant as the Huai Xian pavilion. On the contrary, a kind of rough, simple and grand feeling was revealed through the white bones piled up and the round wood spliced together on the four walls. At this time, the sun shone through the huge window and shone on the hall. The light pillar that was 10 feet in radius enveloped a square chair made of white bones, and on that square chair sat the young Wu Lao. In the light shadow, Wu Lao's face was unusually bright, as if there was a layer of holy light emitting from his body. Ji-Man was dressed in slightly plain clothes and sat below Wu Lao. Opposite her sat Ziming, who had a trace of joy on his face. Xiaohua and the rest entered the hall and saw such a scene. A kind of solemnity arose spontaneously. A few of them did not dare to be negligent and quickly stepped forward to greet Wu Lao and Ji-Man. A trace of a smile appeared on Wu Lao's face as he raised his hand and said, "Little friends from the Dao sect, we have met dozens of days ago. During this period of time, because my Ho-Tu stronghold had some things to do, I have neglected you all. This old man apologizes." "We don't dare," Xiaohua hurriedly replied. "Wu Lao, the Ho-Tu stronghold's affairs are more important. We came from afar to disturb you, and also brought some trouble to your stronghold. The ones who should apologize should be us." "No matter," Wu Lao smiled and said, "this old man already knows everything. Those are mostly some small conflicts. The other thing is my Ho-Tu stronghold's chores, it's nothing. Moreover, you all came together with Ziming to exterminate the demons and capture their souls. In these dozens of days, based on what I obtained from the souls, I cleaned up the entire Ho-Tu stronghold and Shibai stronghold. There were about 2,000 soul warriors who were taken over by the demons. This is beyond this old man's estimation. If this is counted, it's all thanks to Taoist Xiao." Xiaohua hurriedly bowed and said, "Wu Lao is a senior. This Xiao has not yet reached the nascent soul stage, so this Xiao cannot be called Taoist Xiao. Wu Lao can just call this Xiao by his name." "Hee, then this old man will call you little friend Xiao." Wu Lao smiled and said, "Today, I invited little friend Xiao and the rest to come over because I want to discuss something with you. Actually, even if this old man doesn't say it, I think little friend Xiao should know about it, right?" Xiaohua understood and nodded. If there are no accidents, this junior must have obtained the seed of millet from a deserted island outside the sea. Indeed. Wu Lao also denied it. He raised his head and looked at the dazzling sunlight and said, "To be honest, as Wu Lao, I can't leave Ho-Tu stronghold. But this old man has received the order of the Wu King to leave Ho-Tu stronghold and go to the Wu King stronghold in the depths of Wumeng. This old man wants to discuss with the 12 shaman strongholds, the descendants of the 12 great gods, about the drastic change of the weather in Meng Mountains." Xiaohua was a little curious why Wu Lao suddenly talked about the trip to the Wu King stronghold, but he still smiled and listened with great interest. "Wu Lao and Wu King of the 12 shaman strongholds, the 13 of us are helpless when faced with this difficult situation that Meng Mountains has not encountered for thousands of years. We don't know how to deal with it." Wu Lao continued, "Even when this old man arranged for his men to invade the sword domain, wanting to find a place to settle the people in the sword domain, I didn't get a good result. Some of the ideas and methods proposed by the other Wu Lao were also rejected by everyone. Of course, there are also some Wu Lao who talked about the descendant of the great god Shibai, who can affect the weather. They hoped that the Wu Lao of Shibai stronghold could use the power of his bloodline to summon clouds and summon rain. Perhaps it could alleviate the drought of Meng Mountains." Speaking up to here, Wu Lao glanced at Xiao Mao and said, "But according to Wu Lao of Shibai stronghold, the art of summoning clouds and summoning rain is an ancient talisman of Meng Mountains. Only ancient shamans who know the Green Seal script can control it. However, although the Green Seal script is the foundation of the cultivation of Meng Mountain soul spells, the progress is slow, and the price to pay is huge. After so many years, very few people have touched it. Chapter 29-21. Furthermore, this change in the weather is the power of heaven and earth. Even if someone used the power of great god Shibai's bloodline to control the weather, how could it be compared to the power of heaven and earth? The best way is to adapt to it and not resist it. Yes, this is what the Taoist sect always says, it's better to let it go. Therefore, we treated the millet seed as our main focus. However, the millet seed is the food of Meng Mountain Ziming for thousands of years. How could it be made suitable for the millet seed to adapt to the weather overnight? We searched through the shaman canon and racked our brains, but we still couldn't find any ancient shaman art that could change all of this. At the very last moment, when he was at the end of his rope and had no way out, the shaman king was left with no other choice. Thus, he resorted to the mystic arts of Meng Mountains, gathered the blood essence of the descendants of the 12 great gods, and unleashed the art of divine connection. With the Shaman King's divine connection art and the prayers of the 13 of us, the Shaman King was finally able to communicate with heaven and earth and found the will of the great god. Under the will of the great god, the Shaman King gave me the Shaman King's order, ordering me to rush back to Hutta's stronghold and tell him that the fate of Meng Mountain depends on my Hutta's stronghold. Hiss! Hearing this, Xiaohua gasped, and Jiuxia's face immediately appeared in his mind. Wasn't this so-called divine connection art similar to Jiuxia's divination art? It could find out what he wanted to know from nothing? Old Wu ignored Xiaohua's astonishment and continued, "At first, I was surprised, but after seeing what I heard and saw on the way back, and seeing little friend Xiao in the ancestral temple, I immediately understood what the Shaman King meant. The fate of Meng Mountain is really in little friend Zhao's hands." After saying this, Old Wu touched his chest and took out a thumb-sized ring. The ring was completely transparent and had the shape of a crystal skull. The Shaman King said that this is a gift for little friend Xiao. He asked little friend Xiao to visit Wu Meng when you have time. Perhaps something unexpected will happen. The Shaman King also wants to thank little friend Xiao. After saying this, Old Wu waved his hand, and the crystal skull slowly flew in front of Xiaohua. "Elder Wu," Xiaohua smiled bitterly, "Elder Wu, you didn't allow this junior to say anything and just went straight to the point. This junior really doesn't know how to respond. I don't mind giving you this seed. Perhaps it is really Huda great deity who wants to save millions of people in Meng Mountains with the help of me. I also want to do something with this seed. Of course, if the Shaman King's decree can be completed, and I want to do it, I can agree to it now." Alas! Elder Wu sighed, seeming to know what Xiaohua wanted to say, and he shook his head. The 12 main strongholds are a branch of their own, and they don't interfere with each other. Even though the Shaman King commands the Shaman King stronghold and controls the Shaman King command token, he has never interfered with the internal affairs of the 12 main strongholds. I'm afraid that little friend Zhao's plan of borrowing the Witch King token won't work. When he spoke up to hear, Elder Wu stretched out his hand and said to Xiao Mao, "Give me the jade slip and allow me to take a look at your mother's appearance. Perhaps I'll know something." Facing the Elder Wu of Hutta's stronghold who could help him, Xiao Mao didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly took out the jade slip and gave it to Elder Wu. Elder Wu seemed to have divine sense. He took the jade slip and gave it a look, then gave it to Ji-Man. Looking at Elder Wu's frowning face, Xiao Mao's heart skipped a beat. When Ji-Man saw the jade slip and shook her head at Elder Wu, Xiao Mao's heart turned cold. Ji-Man didn't give the jade slip back to Xiao Mao. Instead, she hesitated for a moment, then gave it to Ziming. Ziming had a surprised look on her face, but she still took it. But after she looked at it, she was also at a loss. "Xiao Mao," Elder Wu spoke, "I should have seen Ji-Man of Shibai stronghold, and those who are qualified to inherit Ji-Man's position. But your mother's appearance is really unfamiliar to me. I'm sure I've never seen her before. And since Ji-Man and Ziming have never seen her before, I think she might not be a citizen of Shibai stronghold." "Elder Wu, Ming returned the jade slip to Xiao Mao and said in confusion, if Xiao Mao's mother isn't a citizen of Shi by stronghold, how can Xiao Mao have the bloodline of Shi by great god? If my mother doesn't have the qualifications to inherit Ji-man's position, then why would Fu Man of Shi by stronghold attack Xiao Mao? What does your father look like? Ji-man suddenly asked. This. Xiao Mao was a little embarrassed. Junior's memory of my father is even more vague, and I can't remember at all. If there's the netherworld mirror. At this point, Xiao Mao immediately stopped talking. He understood that he had touched a sore spot. Right, Elder Wu, can the netherworld mirror be repaired? Where are its remains? Hearing this, Xiao Hua knew that he had to face it, so he asked. Compared to the lives of my Ho-Tu stronghold citizens, the netherworld mirror is nothing. Little friend Xiao, you don't have to worry about it. Elder Wu waved his hand and said. Xiao Hua said again, if the netherworld mirror can be repaired, Junior's heart can be at ease. I'm afraid it's not possible. Elder Wu smiled bitterly. I've seen it. It was the backlash of the netherworld's power. It can't be repaired without a great divine ability. I see. Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then said frankly, if Meng Mountains can't be repaired, why don't you give Junior the netherworld mirror's remains and the refining method? Since it's Junior's fault, Junior will do his best to repair it. Elder Wu raised his eyebrows and glanced at Ji-man. Ji-man's eyes revealed a thoughtful expression, then he nodded slightly. Good. Elder Wu nodded. Since little friend has such a heart, how can I not fulfill it? After that, Elder Wu passed down the order, and a moment later, a guard brought in a bone. Xiao Hua took a look at it and kept it. Little did he know that when Xiao Hua took a look at it, Xiao Mao's face revealed a surprised expression, while Elder Wu and Ji-man didn't have any strange expressions. Seeing Xiao Hua keep the bone, Ming took the opportunity and said, Elder Wu, from what this boy saw, Xiao Mao's father looks very similar to Xiao Mao. But Elder Wu didn't say anything, but Xiao Mao felt strange. Young Master Xiao, don't forget, you said it yourself, you were attacked by Fu Man of Shi Bai village. If he didn't know your father and saw that you looked very similar to your father, how could he kill you before you found Shi Bai village? Ming said indifferently. But, Xiao Mao argued, we are mortal enemies with Yi Yu, and we've already seen him at Flowing Cloud Lake. That's not right. At this point, Xiao Mao came to a realization, and said anxiously, Junior always thought that Yi Yu wanted to kill us because we were opponents in the Great War of Dao Sword. Moreover, he knew of Junior's actions at Bai Lu village, so he came to kill us. Junior even thought that his target was my big brother. Yes, Xiao Mao, you don't have to say any more. Elder Wu heard and nodded. If Yi Yu didn't know that you're your father's boy, why would he notice your actions at Bai Lu village? Why would he team up with others to kill you? He must have seen you at Flowing Cloud Lake long ago. Senior, have you seen this Junior's father? Xiao Mao probed. No. Elder Wu and Ji-man both shook their heads. However, Elder Wu smiled and said, that's not a problem. In about 10 days, it's time for Ming to light the soul lamp. Elder Wu from the other 10 villages won't come, but Elder Wu from Shi Bai village will definitely come, and I'll know when I ask him. Yes, thank you, Elder Wu. Xiao Mao's cold heart became lively again. Beside him, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. His seed was originally reserved for Xiao Mao as a trump card, but Xiao Mao was dismissed by Elder Wu with a few words, so what was the point of keeping his seed? Forget it. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and took the crystal skull's ring in his hand. Since Elder Wu has resolved this junior's worries, this junior has nothing to say. Hee, little friend Xiao, Shi Bai village is Shi Bai village, and Huta village is Huta village. I can only be the master of Huta village, and I have no right to interfere with the matters of Shi Bai village. Elder Wu smiled and said, I can only promise Xiao Mao to help him ask. As for how Elder Wu from Shi Bai village will answer, I can't make any decisions. Elder Wu, you only need to do your best. Xiao Hua nodded. Your little finger is thicker than our waists, right? Hee. Elder Wu smiled and didn't say anything. Elder Wu, Junior has a question. Li Zongbao, who had been silent all this time, said, Speak. Elder Wu replied faintly. Although his tone sounded similar to Xiao Hua and the others, Li Zongbao understood that there was a lack of friendliness in his voice. Even when compared to the conversation between Elder Wu and Xiao Mao just now, it was still very different. However, Li Zongbao didn't feel any dissatisfaction in his heart. He said respectfully, "Junior just wants to ask, if the netherworld mirror can't see the person in Junior's heart, does that mean that person is definitely still alive?" Elder Wu looked at Li Zongbao and seemed to be thinking about something. He then asked, "If that's the case, are you sure that person is definitely dead?" "That's right. Junior is sure." Li Zongbao nodded. "Then, what do you think is death and what is life?" Elder Wu asked again. This time, Li Zongbao was at a loss for words. He opened his mouth but didn't know how to answer. "That's right, what is life and what is death?" Although he had experienced the great battle of Dao Sword, experienced many life and death situations, and killed many swordsmen, if he really had to say the true meaning of life and death, how could he say it? Reporting to Elder Fairy Hong Xia quickly bowed and said, "It's like this, you don't have to say more. I already know about this." Elder Wu's tone was still indifferent, but it was still unquestionable. Fairy Hong Xia quickly shut her mouth. "Your Dao sect often says that the Dao of life and death is number one. Without life and death, there is no Dao." Elder Wu looked at Li Zongbao, who was in a daze, and said, "Its mystery is deep in the Dao of heaven. Even among the 12 great gods of Meng Mountain, perhaps only I, the great god Hudu, can understand a thing or two about it. Not to mention you, even I, who have studied the art of souls and the Dao of souls for many years, find it difficult to explain its mystery." Chapter 29-22. However, if we simply talk about life and death, then a human can be divided into two parts. One is the 3 souls and 6 spirits cultivated by the people of Meng Mountain, and the other is the fleshly body cultivated by the Taoist or sword cultivators. The fleshly body is further divided into blood vessels, body, meridians, and so on. If a person's soul is the sky, then the fleshly body is the earth. No matter if it's the sky or the earth, neither can be missing. Without the fleshly body, the soul has no place to reside, and without the soul, the fleshly body becomes an empty shell and can't be considered a human. The soul is extremely important, and as long as one soul or spirit is damaged or lost, the person will no longer be the same person. Even if he is alive, what's the difference between that and death? But if the fleshly body is gone, and the 3 souls and 6 spirits are left in the world, then even if he dies, he can be reborn with an excellent fleshly body. What's the difference between that and being alive? Senior Wu's words were simple, and Li Zongbao might not be unaware of it, but he was still very respectful. But when he heard Senior Wu's words, he couldn't hold back the fire in his heart and said anxiously, "Then, Zhuoxia Shi, as for her situation, this old man has never seen it, so naturally I can't jump to conclusions." Although Senior Wu didn't say anything, there was a slight dissatisfaction on his face, seemingly because he was interrupted by Li Zongbao. He said, "But according to this old man's knowledge, although the person you're talking about has fallen, because of a coincidence, her soul didn't fall into the netherworld. That's why the netherworld mirror can't use the power of her soul to communicate with the netherworld. That's why you can't see what you want to see." There's no reason why I can't see the reincarnation?" Li Zongbao was delighted and asked again. "A person leaves his name when he passes by, and a goose leaves its sound when it passes by. The netherworld mirror can also use the power of a remnant soul to reveal a trace of information about the netherworld. Your situation only means that your soul didn't enter the netherworld." Senior Wu waved his hand and didn't say anything else. "Sigh, Senior Brother Li." Xiao Hua sighed at the side and said to himself, "I've seen people lose a watermelon for a sesame seed, but I've never seen someone as blind as you. The way of life and death, the leader of the 3,000 great ways. Why don't you wait for Venerable Wu to finish speaking before mentioning Kaizhuoxia? It's just a short while. Can you not be so anxious?" Xiao Hua had been listening attentively to Elder Wu's analysis of the way of life and death, But who would have thought that he would be interrupted by Li Zongbao before he could even begin? How could he not sigh? However, Xiaohua understood that compared to the grand Tao of life and death, Kai Zhuoxia's life and death seemed to be more important in Li Zongbao's eyes, right? Seeing that Elder Wu was no longer interested in dissecting, Xiaohua could only probe. In that case, that person's soul is either incomplete or lost. It's impossible for a soul or a spirit to flow into the netherworld. Elder Wu could not answer Xiaohua's question, but he nodded and said, "Indeed. Even if there was a soul in the netherworld, the nether passage mirror would still be able to reveal a trace of it. Therefore, the soul of the person you speak of is either wandering the world, or it was captured by someone else, and used to craft a soul armament." Li Zongbao's expression changed when he heard this. He turned to look at Xiaohua. Xiaohua was also shocked when he heard this. He rolled his eyes and smiled. The possibility of the soul being captured by someone else is not high. To tell you the truth, when that person died, this junior was beside him, and the corpse was also sent back to his hometown by this junior. No one had seen the corpse in between. Therefore, this soul could only be wandering the world. But here comes the question, why didn't this person's soul return to the netherworld? Instead, it's wandering the world? Xiaohua instantly thought of little cabbage Huang Yi. Could it be that Kai Zhuoxia has a ghost cultivation technique? She also made little cabbage? How can this old man answer this? Elder Wu shook his head. After all, this is little friend Zhao's situation. I'm afraid only little friend Xiao can answer this, right? That's right, Hong Xia. Does Kai Zhuoxia know ghost cultivation techniques? Xiaohua originally wanted to transmit his voice, but after thinking about it, he opened his mouth and asked, "Ghost cultivation?" Fairy Hong Xia was stunned and shook her head slightly. "Elder sister and I cultivate the same cultivation technique, but I've never heard of her having such a technique. Furthermore, my Kai family has never had such a legacy." Then that's strange. Although Xiaohua's face was bewildered, in his heart he had already linked Kai Zhuoxia's strangeness with the willow branch. Coincidentally, Zi Ming, who was at the side, opened his mouth again. "Elder Wu, that day when young Master Li and elder sister Hong Xia used the netherworld mirror, there was a trace of green light. Although it was very similar to the soul not being in the netherworld, but Boy felt that there was something different. As for what the difference was, Boy also did not know. This was also later when he reported to Elder Wu. Boy then realized it. The sunlight on Elder Wu's face gradually faded, and his hands were placed on his knees again. His index and middle fingers were trembling rhythmically, as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, he looked at Xiaohua again and said word by word, "Actually, there is still a possibility. Of course, this is only a possibility." Xiaohua's heart trembled and hurriedly asked, "Senior, please speak." The netherworld mirror receives the user's thoughts and establishes a connection with the soul in the netherworld, using the power of the soul to reveal a trace of the situation in the netherworld. The flickering green light in the netherworld is emitted by the soul treasure itself, but there should be a difference between the netherworld without a soul and the netherworld with a soul that is extremely faint. But as for what the difference is, this old man also does not know. According to Zi Ming, that person's soul could have just arrived in the netherworld and immediately left the netherworld. Why did it leave? Perhaps there was an almighty person who used a great divine ability to pull the soul out of the netherworld. Elder Wu said somewhat unconfidently, "Of course, this great divine ability in my Meng Mountain is impossible. Even the Shaman King does not have this great divine ability. Furthermore, this old man is not looking down on the cultivators of your Tao sect. Even if they have reached the tribulation stage and Mahayana stage, it is impossible for them to have this level of magical power. Therefore, this old man did not explain it earlier. After all, this is the only possibility." Xiaohua was even more delighted and hurriedly asked, "Is it possible that there is such a magical item? It can pull that person's soul out of the netherworld?" "Hee, little friend Xiao. How can a magical item be formed? Furthermore, how can such a divine ability be formed by the body? The divine ability that this old man is talking about naturally requires the help of other objects to be formed. As for the treasures of my Meng Mountain's Netherism, or your Dao Sect's capital spiritual treasure, I'm afraid they can't do it, right? Elder Wu said with a smile. Capital spiritual treasure can't do it? Xiao Hua was stunned. Little friend Xiao, what do you think? That is the power of the netherworld. The netherworld that transcends all worldly powers. If a simple capital spiritual treasure and a Mahayana stage cultivator can challenge the power of the netherworld, then wouldn't the 6 paths of reincarnation have long been in chaos? Elder Wu sneered. But at this point, Elder Wu's finger moved slightly and he said, of course, if this person has the power to resist the power of the netherworld and a special capital spiritual treasure, perhaps he can achieve it without any cultivation base? What is the power to resist the power of the netherworld? What is a special capital spiritual treasure? Xiao Hua began to get to the bottom of this. The power of the netherworld is naturally the power of death. If he has the power of life, he can naturally resist the power of the netherworld. Elder Wu said with a smile, however, I don't know what a special capital spiritual treasure is. But I have a special soul treasure in my shaman stockade that can have this effect. Soul falling lamp. Xiao Hua immediately understood. Yes, didn't Ziming always think about how to revive Ziyi? Yes, Elder Wu looked at Ziming affectionately and said, legend has it that the soul falling lamp can fall a soul and can also bring it back. But no one knows how to use it. Ziming's face turned pale, and he lowered his head slightly. The power of life, the third gold tribulation, the power of thunder and lightning. Xiao Hua was enlightened. After beating around the bush for so long, Xiao Hua finally understood that this willow branch was probably an extremely powerful soul treasure. And he could attract thunder. That's not right. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was puzzled again. When I was in the Kai family, I hadn't joined the Imperial Thunder sect, so I didn't know how to control thunder. Sigh, I still don't understand. It seems like the truth won't come to light. Xiao Hua understood that he couldn't ask anymore. If he said too much, even if he didn't say anything about the willow branch, Elder Wu would be able to guess it. Maybe, there was a powerful person related to the Kai family in Luyang that day, who pulled Zhuxia's soul out from the netherworld? Xiao Hua looked at Li Zongbao, then at Fairy Hong Xia, and said softly, but our cultivation is shallow, so we can't see it. Unfortunately, Elder Wu immediately dispelled their thoughts. Such a powerful person has long surpassed your Dao Sect's so-called Mahayana realm. How could they appear in the country of Shi? Moreover, if such a powerful person took action, would you still be able to find my Ho-Tu stockade? Sigh, yes, if there was such a powerful person who surpassed the Mahayana realm, how could Kai Zhuxia be buried? Everything now is just a guess. You should go back and take a look. Elder Wu suggested, even if the soul is left behind and the body is gone, it's still Guili. Yes, Junior understands. Xiao Hua bowed. We thank Elder Wu for your guidance. It's nothing. Elder Wu raised his hand. You don't practice soul arts, so you don't know the mystery of the soul, and don't know the 9 heavens of spirit origin. This old man immersed himself in it, so I have some understanding. At this point, a smile appeared on Elder Wu's face, and he asked, I know I shouldn't ask, but from what G-Man said, that day when you resisted the soul lock, there was a green seal script in your soul. Little friend Xiao, what level of heaven has your soul cultivation reached? Oh, Xiao Hua scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Junior obtained the cloud and rain technique from the Misty Cloud sect, and blindly fumbled about. Now I have cultivated to the clear spirit heaven, I've made a fool of myself. Not bad. Elder Wu laughed. To be able to cultivate to the clear spirit heaven is already rare and commendable. Many cultivators who changed their cultivation to spirit warrior, even if they spend many years, they are still lingering in the ring of spirit heaven. Very few people enter the bright sky and clear sky. Little friend Xiao seems to have a chance to break through. Chapter 29-23. Fooling around, fooling around. Xiao Hua hurriedly smiled. It's because I have the cloud and rain summoning talisman that I used to practice. Practice? Li Zongbao's mind was in a mess. He smiled bitterly. Previously, he used a spiritual treasure like the Kill Immortal Whip to practice, and now he's using a soul cultivator's secret art to practice, this Xiaohua. Yes, Xiaohua's face was getting more and more ferocious. He was no longer the first-level qi refining cultivator that Li Zongbao met in the past. That Elder Wu slightly hesitated, his gaze sweeping over Ziming. Ziming naturally understood Elder Wu's thoughts. Without waiting for Elder Wu to speak, he immediately said to Xiaohua, "Young Master Xiao, my Huda stronghold wants to make a deal with Young Master. I wonder if Young Master is interested?" Xiaohua's eyes lit up, he smiled and said, "When I have nothing to do, I like to go shopping. I can always pick up some good deals." Hee hee, I've said too much. I wonder what kind of deal Huda stronghold wants to make with me? Hee hee, is there even a need to say? Ziming smiled and said, "Young Master has already said, don't you have the cloud and rain summoning talisman of Misty Cloud sect? My Meng Mountain is currently in a drought. Isn't this technique suitable for my Meng Mountain?" I see. Xiaohua suddenly understood, but his eyes rolled and he asked again, "I wonder what good things Huda's stronghold can use to exchange." "It's good that you can exchange." Ziming smiled and said, "I wonder what Young Master Xiao wants." "What do I want?" Xiaohua scratched his head. "Little friend Xiao, if my Huda stronghold doesn't have it, I can find the Shaman King. The cloud and rain summoning talisman is important to my Meng Mountain." Elder Wu smiled and said, "Then what about millet seed?" Xiaohua smiled and said, seeing Xiaohua finally point out the most important thing today, Elder Wu was not surprised. He said seriously, "Millet seed is more important than the cloud and rain summoning talisman. I must get it no matter what. Therefore, I'll talk to little friend Xiao first." Good. Seeing Elder Wu speak so straightforwardly, Xiaohua also clapped and said to Ji-Man, "I don't want anything else. I just want the cloud and rain summoning talisman of Confucian inheritance." Confucian inheritance? Everyone in the hall was stunned. Elder Wu and Ji-Man had thought about it for a long time and thought of all kinds of possibilities, but they didn't expect that Xiaohua would want the inheritance of a Confucian cultivator. That's impossible. Ji-Man replied almost without thinking. Likewise, Old Wu had a wry smile on his face as he helplessly replied, "Little friend Xiao, my Huda stronghold is a soul cultivator of the Meng Mountains. You can choose whatever you want from our soul arts. Aren't you making things difficult for me by looking for the inheritance of a Confucian cultivator? Besides, the inheritance of Confucianism is Ji-Man's own destiny. It has nothing to do with our Hutu stronghold." Even Ziming couldn't understand what Xiaohua was thinking. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Xiaohua strangely. Xiaohua also felt very embarrassed. He thought to himself, "Nonsense, this is the Hutu stronghold. You let this young master choose. I've chosen the legacy of Confucianism because it has nothing to do with your Magus village, and I don't want to make things difficult for you. So this young master's thoughtfulness is making things difficult for you?" Xiaohua touched his nose habitually and said with a smile, "This matter is making things difficult for Old Wu. Then just pretend that this junior didn't say anything. Since Old Wu has given the conditions, you obviously have a plan. Then there's no need to play riddles with this junior. Just tell this junior directly." Old Wu shook his head helplessly. He was indeed prepared, and also wanted to have a good talk with Xiaohua. However, he really didn't expect Xiaohua's thoughts to be so unimaginable. He was indeed forced to the end. After thinking for a moment, Old Wu waved his hand and said, "Since little friend Xiao is so straightforward, then this old man won't hide it. For little friend Zhao's art of traveling clouds and summoning rain, this old man also took out a talisman from my Magus village in exchange for little friend Xiao." Xiaohua was delighted and said with a smile, "What talisman is that? What effect does it have?" This Old Wu's face once again revealed an extremely rare expression of embarrassment. He said in a low voice, "This old man is also not very clear about the effect of this talisman." "Ah?" Xiaohua was stunned. If even Old Wu doesn't know, then how would this junior know? "It's like this," Old Wu said with a smile, "We don't have a rejuvenation pill, but little friend Xiao does. With a pill that can replenish life essence, Little friend Xiao will try his best to test the effect of this talisman. Old Wu, do you think that the rejuvenation pill is so easy to concoct? If that's the case, how could Ziming not show filial piety to Ji-Man? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Now this junior doesn't have any rejuvenation pills. The corner of Ji-Man's eyes twitched, but he didn't say anything. Old Wu said with a smile, if even Taoist Xiao doesn't have a way, then we don't have a way either. Sigh, Old Wu, this junior doesn't understand. Xiao Hua seemed to be beating around the bush. This talisman belongs to your Meng Mountain. Even my Taoist sect's spirit-severing masters don't understand it. Why is this talisman declining so much? Old Wu looked at Xiao Hua for a moment. Seeing that Xiao Hua only mentioned the millet seed and was now asking questions, he thought that Xiao Hua was increasing the stakes. However, he could not answer, so he could only say, from what Ziming said, little friend Xiao has already met Kachin. Presumably, you also know that he needs to rely on talismans to repair the fallen soul lamp. You also know that using talismans consumes life essence. But how much life essence can a person have in this world? How can these life essences withstand the repeated use of talismans? But the question is, why does Meng Mountain have talismans? Are they all used by those spirit warriors who don't care about their lives? Xiao Hua asked without giving up. Sigh, speaking of this old man has to tell you some of my Meng Mountain secrets. Old Wu looked at Ji-Man and said helplessly, little friend Xiao, do you know the bloodline of my Meng Mountain's 12 great gods? I know a little. Xiao Hua nodded slightly. Actually, in the end, these talismans are the words of my Meng Mountain's 12 great gods. Old Wu said respectfully, the words of the 12 great gods came true. It really affected the changes of the heavenly Tao. And as the 12 great gods transformed into heaven and earth, these words were controlled by the descendants of the 12 great gods' bloodline. Thus, they became talismans. The words of the 12 great gods are naturally exclusive to the great gods. In fact, how can we, mere mortals, control them? Only the legendary demigod body of my Meng Mountain can control these talismans. Demigod body? Xiao Hua looked to the side again, feeling a little dizzy. He only wanted to bargain, who knew that it would lead to the demigod body. The demigod body, as the name implies, has the body of a great god. Old Wu said calmly, aside from the great god's divinity, the demigod body can't have the body of a great god. Everything else is no different from a great god. Old Wu, what is this demigod body? This divinity, what is it? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He knew that the inheritance of millions of Meng Mountain was really ancient. Every word of Old Wu was enough for him to think about for several years. Old Wu thought for a moment and asked, little friend Xiao, do you know about the power of faith? The power of faith? Xiao Huan naturally had some impression of it, but he didn't dare to admit it. He directly denied it. How could this junior know about your millions of Meng Mountain? Actually, these words were not said by the sole cultivators of Meng Mountain. Old Wu explained again. Sai, let's put it simply. The power of faith is the confidence, worship, and prayers of others in you. So what? Xiao Huan naturally asked in confusion. When the power of faith is concentrated to the extreme, it can condense into an object. This object is the divinity. Old Wu said mysteriously, the divinity is born from faith, and the great gods live by faith. It's really like that? I don't understand. Xiao Hua was even more straightforward. Old Wu ignored him and continued. The demigod body is those who have the same body as the 12 great gods, but don't have the divinity and don't have the power of faith. What about the divinity? Then the talisman won't consume life essence? Xiao Hua asked curiously. It doesn't need to be upgraded to the level of divinity. Old Wu smiled. As long as you have the demigod body, the talisman won't consume life essence. This junior seems to understand a little. This seems to be related to the bloodline. Xiao Hua seemed to understand a little, and then he asked in an extremely natural manner, then, how do you cultivate this demigod body? Cultivate? Old Wu's lips curled up slightly, seemingly disdainful, and said indifferently, The cultivators of the Tao sect have always stolen the essence of heaven and earth for their own use. They have always been opportunistic, thinking that they can reach the heavens with their own strength. But how can the profoundness of heaven and earth be comprehended by humans? How can the profoundness of heaven and earth be comprehended by cultivation alone? If everything can be cultivated, wouldn't my Meng Mountain have tens of thousands of demigod bodies? Seeing how Old Wu was so disdainful of the Tao sect's cultivation method, which was similar to what Ziming said earlier, Xiaohua also felt helpless. Xiaohua felt helpless. His cultivation base couldn't be compared to Old Wu, so he naturally couldn't refute. This was the so-called, those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua smiled and said, Senior has told this junior so much, this junior can't refute. After all, this junior's cultivation base is still shallow. But since my Tao sect's Tao is so prosperous, it naturally has been passed down from ancient times. It might not be any weaker than the soul cultivators of Meng Mountain. As the saying goes, all things return to the same origin. Perhaps the 3,000 great Taos of my Tao sect have some similarities with the great Taos of soul cultivators. This old man is indeed a little too hasty. Old Wu laughed. What cultivation base do you have? How would you know if I told you this? But I'm afraid you now understand the importance of the power of bloodline. The ancestors of my Meng Mountain relied on this demigod body to pass down the words of the 12 great gods. But now, the bloodline of the 12 great gods is getting thinner and thinner. The demigod body has become a legend, and the talisman has become even more of a legend. Since the demigod body can't be cultivated, then Old Wu is using the talisman to exchange for the talisman. Does that mean you want me to? Xiaohua looked at Old Wu with a smile. Chapter 29-24. Elder Wu was unlucky to meet such a greedy Xiaohua. He smiled and said, This old man doesn't have any other thoughts. Firstly, this old man knows that you have the rejuvenation pill that can replenish life essence. Secondly, G-Man and Ziming have seen your green seal script. That's why I want to exchange talismans for talismans. If little friend Xiao doesn't think it's suitable, we can continue the discussion. Can this junior see the talismans now? Xiaohua was tempted. Of course you can. Old Wu stretched out his hand, and a thumb-sized bone suddenly appeared in his hand. Then, with a flick of his finger, the bone flew in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua caught it with his hand and used his soul sense to look at it. Only then did he realize that this was how the green seal script was recorded. He had been bargaining with Venerable Wu all this while, but he never thought that he didn't even know how to record the green seal text. What could he use to exchange with Venerable Wu? Only by looking at this bone would he be able to give the green seal text of the art of traveling clouds and summoning rain to Elder Wu. What do you think? Elder Wu was obviously looking forward to this art of clouds and rain, and he didn't hide his impatience. On the contrary, his attitude made Xiaohua, who had always been petty and calculative, somewhat embarrassed to say anything more. All right. Xiaohua kept the bone and nodded. Since Elder Wu is so sincere, how can this junior not agree? This is beneficial to the millions of people of Meng Mountain. This junior should agree. Good. Seeing Xiaohua keep the bone, Elder Wu's heart was finally at ease. He clapped his hands and smiled. This old man knows that little friend Xiao will agree. But until now, this old man still can't be at ease. This is human nature. Xiaohua smiled. This junior will now record the green seal script of the art of clouds and rain. Elder Wu raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, There's no record of this bone? Xiaohua shrugged. Furthermore, the green seal script of Misty Cloud's sect has disappeared. This junior. This is the only shop in the entire world. Elder Wu smiled and didn't continue the conversation. Xiaohua was also very generous. He was merely a soul cultivator, and his cultivation was very shallow. He wasn't afraid of being laughed at and immediately sat down. Young Master Xiao, what are you doing? Ziming asked curiously. This Xiao is going to record the passing clouds and summoning rain technique right now? Xiaohua said in all seriousness. Young master? Young master, do you know how to record green seal text soul techniques? Ming probed. This Xiao really doesn't know how to. However, looking at Elder Wu's green seal scripture bone, I would like to try. Xiaohua didn't hide it. After all, Elder Wu values this matter very much. This Xiao also wants to give this green seal text to Huda village. Ming was speechless. He looked at Grandmaster Wu, and when he saw no reaction from Grandmaster Wu, he reached out his hand and took out a bone from his soul nest. Then he threw it over to Xiaohua and said, "Young Master Xiao, do you think the soul technique of Meng Mountains is an ordinary Dao art? Take a good look at it. Is this green seal text easy to record?" This. Xiaohua's face was a little embarrassed. He didn't expect Ming to have the method to create a bone. However, when he took the bone and scanned it with his soul sense, although his expression didn't change, he suddenly understood. Not only did this bone contain the method to record green seal text, there were also many other soul techniques. Ming had said earlier that soul techniques were the secret of Huta village. She couldn't give it to Xiaohua casually. Perhaps taking this opportunity to give it to Xiaohua in front of Grandmaster Wu, she wouldn't be going against the teachings of her ancestors. Sure enough, Grandmaster Wu glanced at Ming and said, "Young Master Xiao, what Ming said is true. My Meng Mountains green seal text isn't the same as your Dao sex technique. It can't be recorded by ordinary words. The method recorded in this bone is also a trick. It's not the real green seal text. I think Young Master Xiao has already seen the real green seal text. It can only be recorded by an almighty person who can truly control the green seal text." Yes, this junior knows. Xiaohua stood up from the ground and said, "The method recorded in this bone is obviously different from what Junior has seen before. That's why Junior thought I could record it immediately. I've made a fool of myself in front of Grandmaster Wu. It's fine. When you leave Huda village, just give this bone to this old man." Grandmaster Wu nodded his head slightly. "Of course, if you need any other soul techniques, you can ask Ming for them as long as you don't go against the teachings of our ancestors." "Thank you, Grandmaster Wu." Xiaohua understood that Ming's little trick couldn't be hidden from Grandmaster Wu. "Alright." Grandmaster Wu sighed. "Compared to the life and death of my Meng Mountains trillions of people, soul cultivation secret techniques and soul treasures are nothing. As for the art of traveling clouds and summoning rain, this old man has some selfish motives. When I was seeking benefits for my Meng Mountains people, I also left behind a soul technique for the people of Hutu village. As for the seed of millet, this old man really doesn't know how to deal with young Master Xiao. Young Master Xiao, you can tell me your thoughts. As long as my Huda village can do it, this old man will agree. If my Huda village can't satisfy young Master Xiao, this old man will report to the Shaman King." With the power of the descendants of the 12 great gods of Meng Mountains, with the power of the 12 main villages of Meng Mountains, I believe there's nothing in this world that can't be done. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. He was overjoyed. Wasn't this a good thing that was delivered to him? Previously, he wanted to give this seed of millet to Xiaomao as the capital to return to Shibai village. He had just mentioned this to Grandmaster Wu, but Grandmaster Wu only said that it was the internal affairs of Shibai village, and he couldn't directly interfere. But now, Grandmaster Wu had directly brought out the Shaman King, so he only needed to say a few words, right? However, just as he was about to say something, he was suddenly startled. That's not right. If Xiao Mao's matter could be solved so easily, why didn't Grandmaster Wu mention it just now? Instead, he mentioned anything now? He even mentioned the power of the 12 main villages. Damn it, I understand now. Grandmaster Wu mentioned Xiao Mao's matter early on, so I don't have to use this matter as the price. He also said clearly just now that Ho-Tu village can't interfere with the internal affairs of Shibai village. If I keep mentioning Xiao Mao's matter, then wouldn't I be making things difficult for Grandmaster Wu? Even if I reported it to the Shaman King, the Shaman King can't interfere with the internal affairs of Shibai village. At this moment, Xiao Mao's voice came into Xiaohua's ears. "Big brother, don't mention my matter anymore. You've done enough for me. Everything from now on will depend on me. You need to make some plans for yourself. The power of Meng Mountains far surpasses the power of the three kingdoms. Although I don't know why Big Brother has been concealing your cultivation base, I'm sure you have some difficulties that you can't talk about. Now is a good opportunity. With the support of Meng Mountain's shaman kings, who are you afraid of? Io, hearing Xiao Mao's words, Xiao Hua was stunned. Like a clay statue, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then, a wild joy flashed across his face. That's right, Xiao Hua had always been scheming for others, whether it was Fairy Hong Xia, Li Zongbao, or even Xiao Mao. But he had never thought of using the seed of millet and the power of millions of Meng Mountains to scheme for himself. Besides, he always felt that he had gained a lot from Meng Mountains. If it wasn't for Xiao Mao's matter, he would rather give the seed of millet to the natives of Meng Mountains. Just like what he had done in the Three Kingdoms and Sword Domain. However, before his eyes, not to mention the problem of memory loss, even the seal of his Mud Pill Palace and Middle Dantian was like a heavy mountain pressing down on his heart. He couldn't relax and he couldn't slack off. Xiao Mao was right. With the power of Meng Mountains, why would he be afraid of these things? Even if there were divinity severing or void refinement cultivators who came to make things difficult for him, how could they compare to the 12 shamans of Meng Mountains? Seeing the wild joy on Xiao Hua's face, Grandmaster Wu laughed in his heart. The reason why he was so humble, bargaining with a Dao sect cultivator who was much weaker than him, was partly because of himself, and partly because of the Shaman King's Shaman King order. He knew very well that the Shaman King wouldn't invite Xiao Hua to the Shaman King's stronghold for no reason. The Shaman King's divine spell was a famous soul spell in Meng Mountains, and it was the Shaman King's divine ability. Grandmaster Wu believed that this Xiao Hua wasn't as simple as he seemed. On the other hand, Grandmaster Wu knew the significance of Taoist Xiao to the natives of Meng Mountains, and he also knew the significance of Taoist Xiao in the Three Kingdoms. Although he wasn't proficient in the power of faith, he was still the Grandmaster of Shaman Stronghold. How could he not know the impact of killing Taoist Xiao? In fact, most importantly, Grandmaster Wu knew that Xiao Hua, who could easily give the seed of millet to the natives of the Three Kingdoms, wouldn't make things difficult for him. Sure enough, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. Grandmaster Wu, in fact, this junior obtained these seeds by accident. To tell you the truth, the number of seeds of millet and rice is huge, and it can definitely save the natives of Meng Mountains from danger in a few years or even a dozen years. You can say that these seeds of millet were sent to the natives of Meng Mountains by this junior's hand. This junior should just give them to Grandmaster Wu for free. But, since the 12 great gods want to send them to me, then it must be related to this junior. Now, this junior has two big problems that I need Grandmaster Wu's help with. Xiao Hua changed the topic. Of course, even if Grandmaster Wu can't do these two things, I will still send the seeds of millet to you. After saying that, Xiao Hua didn't say anything else. He reached out his hand, took out a dozen storage bags from his chest and waist, and handed them over to Grandmaster Wu, saying, "These are the storage bags for the seeds of millet." This junior didn't dare to take them out before, but looking at the number now, there are 12 or 13 of them. I'm afraid the 12 great gods have already calculated this beforehand. Please accept them, Grandmaster Wu. Great. Even though Grandmaster Wu was mentally prepared, when he saw Xiao Hua being so generous, he couldn't help but be impressed. He almost stood up, clapped his hands and said, "Taoist Zhao's kindness, we, the people of Meng Mountains, will never forget it." Ziming also had a smile on her face. She stepped forward and received the storage bags. When she casually glanced at them, her face was once again filled with shock, and she said in surprise, "Young Master Xiao, why are there so many? This is really beyond my imagination." Chapter 29-25. That's right, the storage pouch was filled with millet seeds. The amount was shocking. It's all because of the 12 great deities. It has nothing to do with me. Xiao Hua was used to talking about the 12 great deities, so he said it casually. Ziming gave up on G-Man and walked to Grandmaster Wu with a smile. He took one and gave it to Grandmaster Wu. Grandmaster Wu looked at it with a smile and said, "I didn't expect there would be so many millet seeds. If that's the case, Why would my Meng Mountains need more than 10 years? I'm afraid it will be over in less than 5 years. If that's the case, why does Grandmaster Wu still need to fight? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Not bad, not bad. Grandmaster Wu laughed and ordered Ji-Man. Pass down my order. All the people of Hutsu village who killed their way into Sword Domain are to retreat to Meng Mountains. Yes, I will pass down the order now. Ji-Man nodded and was about to leave. Grandmaster Wu pointed his finger and said, These millet seeds are extremely precious. They will be the lifeblood of Meng Mountains in the future. Keep them well. But Ji-Man hesitated. Keep them, or do you want me to do it myself? Grandmaster Wu said indifferently. Yes, I will do it now. Ji-Man nodded, but when she saw Ziming's vigilance, she said, How about this? There are a lot of millet seeds. Ziming and I will take half each. All right. Grandmaster Wu waved his hand indifferently, and Ziming unwillingly took out 6 storage pouches and threw them to Ji-Man, looking at Ji-Man's back as she took the storage pouches and walked out of the hall. Grandmaster Wu's eyes flashed with a hint of helplessness. Then he said to Xiao Hua, Little friend Xiao, now you can tell me what your 2 important matters are. Xiao Hua's mood was a little agitated. He had been looking forward to his birth for a long time, and for so many years, he had been constantly running around to find his birth. Facing this master of soul cultivation, Xiao Hua knew that he could definitely find the reason for his memory loss, and could definitely give him a satisfactory answer. After thinking for a while, Xiao Hua lowered his voice and suppressed the excitement in his heart and said, The first matter I want to ask Senior is about my birth. Your birth? Grandmaster Wu was stunned. Xiao Hua's words always gave him surprises. He couldn't think of how he knew Xiao Hua's birth. It's like this. Ever since I woke up, I have lost all my previous memories. Xiao Hua explained concisely, That's why I didn't know about my past at all. Now, I beg Senior to help this junior recover his previous memories. Oh, I see. Venerable Wu raised his eyebrows and asked in a deep voice with a solemn expression, Although I'm Venerable Wu of Hutsu Stockade, I've also practiced many soul secret techniques. But these memories are extremely secretive things. You want this old man to help you recover your memories and find the reason why you lost your memories. That's the same as exposing everything to this old man. Are you sure you want this old man to use a soul technique? This. Xiao Hua hesitated. He looked at Fairy Red Dawn, and then glanced over at Ziming. Hong Xia Fairy and Ziming's faces were slightly flushed. They naturally understood what Old Wu meant. If Old Wu wanted to help Xiao Hua, then everything about Xiao Hua would be exposed to Old Wu. Everything about Xiao Hua and the 2 of them would also be revealed to Old Wu. However, thinking about Xiao Hua's pain in finding out about his past, Hong Xia Fairy gritted her teeth and nodded at Xiao Hua. At the same time, Ziming winked at Xiao Hua with his right eye. Sigh. If Fairy Hong Xia and Ziming both hesitated, Xiao Hua's heart would feel better. However, both of them agreed at the same time, causing Xiao Hua to feel very sad. Little friend Xiao, if you don't mind, can you let this old man take a look at the seal? Elder Wu naturally did not dare to be careless. He asked for Xiao Hua's opinion in a low voice. Of course. What does Junior need to do? Xiao Hua asked impatiently. No need. You just need to stand there. Elder Wu said with a smile. Then his star-like eyes flashed with a jade green light. The light was like a burning flame, getting brighter and brighter. It was so bright that no one dared to look at it directly. Moreover, an indescribable feeling arose in everyone's heart. It was as if this jade fire could pierce through the 9 heavens and the 9 underworlds, and see through everything in this world. Strange. However, just as this thought appeared in everyone's mind, Elder Wu actually let out a cry of shock, and the jade fire in his eyes slowly extinguished. What's wrong? Xiao Hua could not help but tremble. He asked carefully. It's a little strange. Elder Wu's eyes flashed with a strange light again. He said curiously, This old man, forget it. Little friend Xiao, this old man is going to take a closer look. Don't resist. Junior understands. Xiao Hua nodded. He withdrew the golden light protecting his body and withdrew all of his true essence into his gold core. Elder Wu walked to Xiao Hua's front with light steps and extended his finger. Just like that day when he checked the memories of the devil cultivator in the soul pearl, a sparkling and translucent jade-green crystal thread emerged from his index finger and slowly probed into Xiao Hua's middle dantian. After the time it took to eat a meal, Elder Wu's expression was first astonished. Then it became serious. Finally, he revealed a thoughtful expression. After Elder Wu withdrew the soul thread and returned to his position, Xiao Hua released the golden light protecting his body again. He asked carefully, "Senior," sighed little friend Xiao. Elder Wu wanted to say something but stopped. His eyes flashed with undisguised greed. He extended his two hands and looked at his smooth skin. Then he looked at Xiao Hua's face. He seemed to be thinking of something, but after he opened his mouth, it was absolutely out of everyone's expectations. "Zi Ming, bring them down first. This old man has something to talk to Xiao Hua alone." Zi Ming was also surprised. He stood up and left with Fairy Hong Xia and the rest. "Senior?" Xiao Hua knew that this matter was serious. Even Fairy Hong Xia couldn't listen to it. "Xiao Hua, you must remember what this old man said. The questions you asked me today, in the future, you must not ask anyone else. And from today onwards, no matter who it is, you must not let them get close to you. You must not let them use their secret techniques to check your body," Elder Wu said in an extremely serious tone. Xiao Hua was stunned. "You should know that your physical body is a test for this old man. If this old man didn't obtain your rejuvenation pill, my body's life essence would have been replenished. Moreover, under my Meng Mountain secret technique, this old man's requirements for my body are extremely low. But even so, this old man still couldn't help but feel greedy just now." Elder Wu sighed. "Moreover, this old man doesn't need to look at your memories anymore. Needless to say, your soul must have been searched by someone. All of your previous memories were destroyed, so that they could successfully take over your body." "They? Take over this junior's body?" Xiao Hua was stunned. Elder Wu's words were truly out of his expectations. He originally thought that the enemy who sealed his middle dantian had a grudge against him, but who would have thought that they actually wanted to take over his body? But if they wanted to take over his body, why didn't they take over his body before? Why did they seal his middle dantian? Just now, this old man didn't know why I told you about the demigod body. But now, this old man understands that this was all driven by Hutu Great God. Sending you to this old man was also Hutu Great God's intention." Elder Wu sighed. "Although your body can't be said to be a demigod body, your body is very strange. It can block this old man's soul vision. Moreover, this old man roughly probed it just now. Your body contains the aura of a great god. It is the most special body this old man has ever seen. Not to mention, if this old man takes over your body, I can use green seal text at will without worrying about wasting my life essence. Even if a Dao sect cultivator takes over your body, he can also improve his cultivation at an extremely fast pace." "Elder Wu, what is the aura of a great god?" Xiao Hua was confused. "How should I put it?" Elder Wu pondered for a moment and said, "A great god doesn't always exist. It also comes from nothing. The place where a great god is born will have the aura of a great god. Only with the aura of a great god can a great god be born. Sigh, if not for the fact that you don't have the bloodline of the 12 great gods, this old man would have taken over your body. If not for this old man having taken the rejuvenation pill." Elder Wu sighed again. Chapter 29-26. Xiao Hua was really scared and shrunk his neck. He didn't expect his body to be so precious. "Maybe it's because of your great god's aura that the 12 great gods sent you to Meng Mountains." Old Wu laughed. "You're the messenger of the 12 great gods of Meng Mountains. I wouldn't dare to have any ideas about you." However, at this point, Elder Wu continued sternly, "Of course, even if I don't dare to do it, it doesn't mean that others don't dare to. Xiao Hua, you must remember what I said just now. I asked Ziming and the others to leave for the same reason. This is your biggest secret. You must not underestimate it. Yes, this junior understands. Thank you, Old Wu. Xiaohua bowed. Also, about the seal on your middle dantian, I've looked at it carefully just now. It's an extremely rare seal in your Dao sect. If I'm not wrong, it should be done by 2 or 3 people at the same time. These 3 people's cultivation bases are either spirit severing or void refinement, and to break this seal, even if it's the so-called combination, it won't be easy. Old Wu said again. But Xiaohua's face changed. This seal isn't a simple seal, but the people who cast the seal used a special method to cast different seals. These different seals complement each other, just like your Dao sect's yin and yang mutual restraint technique. If the people who cast the seal didn't know the order of these seals and unseal it according to the special method, then this seal would immediately explode from the inside out. According to what I know, this explosion should be equivalent to the joint attack of these people. Old Wu had already understood, and his face regained its calmness as he slowly explained to Xiaohua. Hearing this, Xiaohua's face changed greatly. He instantly understood the shock of the 10,000 demon realm goddess when she saw the seal that day. This seal was really too insidious. If the people who cast the seal didn't unseal it personally, not only would Xiaohua be unable to protect himself, even the cultivators who saved Xiaohua would be seriously injured. In particular, this was a life and death struggle. If they couldn't get Xiaohua's body and couldn't seize it, then others couldn't get it either. Not to mention Xiaohua removing the seal by himself, even if he found someone else. If he wasn't careful, the first one to fall would definitely be Xiaohua. No matter what, the middle dantian. Yes, and the Naiwen Palace, it was impossible for it to disappear from Xiaohua's body. As long as there was a problem with the seal, Xiaohua would be the first to suffer. In fact, Xiaohua already had a feeling that the seal on his middle dantian and the seal on his Naiwen Palace were definitely not isolated. The 2 seals should have a definite connection. Furthermore, these 2 seals might have to be unsealed at the same time. In the end, Old Wu still let it slip. If there was any mistake in the 2 seals, Xiaohua's dantian and his Naiwen Palace would be in danger. This was simply imprisoning Xiaohua under the seal. Senior, do you have any ideas? Xiaohua clearly knew how powerful the seal was, but he still felt lucky in his heart. He asked probingly, wanting to find a life-saving straw. Sigh. Venerable Wu sighed, shook his head and said, I'm a shaman of Meng Mountains, not a cultivator of your Dao sect. How could I possibly have studied this strange seal? Besides, even if I knew how to break this seal, I would need at least 3 shamans with the same cultivation base as me to break this seal. Moreover, the 3 of us would need to have excellent teamwork. As long as there was a slight mistake in breaking the seal, you would immediately be turned into ashes, and we would also be affected. Do you think you can let us do it without worry? Sigh, yes, different professions are like different mountains. Xiaohua also sighed, his heart was like dead ashes. He understood how difficult this matter was for Old Wu. Moreover, he understood even more clearly how difficult it was to break this seal. Unless his cultivation base was profound, and he had a few close friends with a cultivation base around the unity stage, or a master of the thunder controlling sect, he could ask them to help him when he found a way to break the seal. However, if that was the case, another problem would appear. When Xiaohua was cultivating the Buddha Saraira, he wrapped his Naiwen Palace in the Buddha Saraira, and the seal of his Naiwen Palace was naturally also stored in the Buddha Saraira. If Xiaohua asked someone to break the seal, wouldn't Xiaohua's Buddhist cultivation base be exposed in front of others? Besides, the one who sealed him was a split divinity or unity stage cultivator. How could they let him cultivate to the split divinity stage? Xiaohua heard from Old Wu that it was a joint seal by several cultivators. If he was not mistaken, then it must be because he only had one physical body. Those cultivators were unable to come to an agreement, so they sealed him. They were looking for a way to coordinate, and when these people found a solution, they would immediately come to find him. Moreover, even if they didn't have a solution, they wouldn't let him cultivate to the split divinity stage. Sigh, fate really makes fools of people. Xiao Hua sighed. He understood that this matter was already extremely difficult and had become a dead end. Whether it was relying on his own strength or relying on the strength of others, it was unlikely that he could break this seal. Seeing Xiao Hua's pale face, Old Wu was no longer as shocked as before, and even a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Sigh, if that's the case, Junior has no more requests. Xiao Hua sighed again, bowed to Old Wu and said, "These millet seeds will be given to the millions of people of Meng Mountain." "You really don't want anything?" Old Wu raised his eyebrows and asked. "Really?" Speaking of this, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again. He thought for a while and said, "If Old Wu has the heart, give Junior some of the strange flowers and plants around Huta village, or some strange things. Junior might be able to find some ancient divine ability from them." "Ha! How could there be so many ancient divine abilities?" Old Wu laughed. "If there were, this old man would have already taken them." Looking at Old Wu laughing, Xiao Hua was a little puzzled. He was already so miserable, how could he still laugh? But then, Old Wu reached out his hand and took out a soul nest from his chest and handed it to Xiao Hua. "Little friend Xiao, this is a gift from the Shaman King. It is also a part of the gift to thank you for saving the people of Meng Mountain." Xiao Hua was stunned. He didn't understand why Old Wu didn't give it to him when he took out the Shaman King's token. Old Wu wasn't surprised by Xiao Hua's stunned expression at all, and said with a smile, "This is the Shaman King's divine ability." He clearly said that if little friend asks for some strange flowers and plants, this old man can only give this soul nest to little friend. Otherwise, of course there is no need. Earlier, little friend only asked this old man to help you with 2 difficult problems. This old man thought that the Shaman King's divine ability was wrong. Xiao Hua was speechless. Whether it was the Shaman King's divine ability or Jioxia's divination, they all seemed to have a miraculous effect, and even had the same effect. Especially, the Shaman King's divine ability could actually calculate what kind of flowers and plants he wanted. It was really amazing. Sigh. "Then thank you, Shaman King." Xiao Hua's face didn't have any joy. He took the soul nest and put it into his chest without even looking at it. "Little friend Xiao, you don't seem to understand it." Seeing Xiao Hua's powerless appearance, Old Wu's face had some exaggerated astonishment as he asked curiously, "Junior is already like this, what else do I not understand?" Xiao Hua indeed replied angrily, "Even if the Shaman King will." Speaking up to hear, Xiao Hua was suddenly stunned, an expression of ecstasy appeared on his face, even his body was slightly trembling as he asked with an incredulous tone, "Old Wu, could it be that the Shaman King already knows, whether the Shaman King knows about the seal on little friend's body through the divine ability, this old man doesn't dare to guarantee. He didn't say anything." Old Wu smiled, "But little friend, don't forget that the Shaman King asked this old man to give the Shaman King's token to little friend first. He even asked little friend to make a trip to the Shaman King's stronghold. Now that I think about it, doesn't that mean that he has a way to remove the seal? It's just that this matter is too important and he didn't want me to know, so he directly asked you to go to the Shaman King's stronghold, right?" That's right. Xiao Hua was wild with joy. What Old Wu said was exactly in line with Xiao Hua's thoughts. If the Shaman King didn't have a way to remove the seal, why would he ask Xiao Hua to make a trip to the Shaman King's stronghold? Even if the Shaman King had something to thank Xiao Hua for, he could have directly asked Old Wu to bring it over. Moreover, didn't the Shaman King ask Old Wu to give this soul nest to Xiao Hua to tell Xiao Hua about this matter? Immediately, Xiao Hua, who previously felt that his future was gloomy, brightened up again. Truly, the world was vast and there were no more bumps in the road. After Xiao Hua's eyebrows were raised in joy, he pondered slightly and asked in a low voice, "When is a suitable time for me to go to Wu Meng?" Old Wu shook his head slightly. "The Shaman King didn't tell this old man, so of course I don't know." "Then, can I go now?" Xiao Hua took the opportunity to ask again, his heart thumping wildly. "Of course you can," Old Wu said with a smile. "The Shaman King's token is in little friend's hand. Little friend can go there at any time." After getting the affirmative answer from old Wu, Xiao Hua hesitated instead. He thought for a while and said, "To remove my seal, it will definitely take the Shaman King's great divine ability. Currently, the hardship of millions of people in Meng Mountains is not over yet. If I go there now, it will be somewhat threatening. In my opinion, why don't I wait for a few years? When the disaster of millions of people in Meng Mountains is over, then I'll pay a visit to the Shaman King." "Up to you." Old Wu shrugged his shoulders, which was rare for him. "As long as you feel that the seal won't affect you too much these few years, you can go there at any time. And this seal should be fine." Xiao Hua nodded. "Even if I have stepped into the nascent soul realm now, those people might not put me in their eyes. Besides, they haven't made any moves for so many years, so I think this negotiation won't be completed in 10 years. I can also take this time to improve my cultivation." Chapter 29-27. As long as you think it's okay. Elder Wu nodded. Then he looked at the door of the hall and said, "Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction is not doing well in his cultivation. When you go back, ask him to cultivate more. It's better for him to ask for help from his own faction." "Yes, I know. It's all my fault." Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. This was the second soul cultivator besides Master Qin Qin who had mentioned this to him. Of course, Elder Wu wouldn't help Li Zongbao for no reason, although he could ask Elder Wu for help. However, Elder Wu had made it clear that Li Zongbao could ask for help from the Utopia faction. Elder Wu wasn't proficient in Taoist magic, so he might not be able to do the best job. Then Xiao Hua told Elder Wu about Li Zongbao's situation. However, Elder Wu didn't pay much attention to it. After hearing that, he didn't say anything. Instead, he asked Zi Ming and the others to come in. Fairy Hongxia's face was filled with worry as she followed closely behind Zi Ming into the palace. However, when she saw the smile on Xiao Hua's face instead of the worry she had expected, her heart immediately settled down and she couldn't help but smile. Of course, Zi Ming, who was leading the way, was also worried. His reaction was similar to Fairy Hongxia's. However, when Zi Ming smiled, he glanced at Fairy Hongxia secretly. "Zi Ming." Elder Wu's expression became calm again. "Now that everything in the Huda village is settled, I should worry about you. You can take a bath and meditate. I'll ask G-Man to issue a wizard order to summon all wizard elders of the Hutu village. In addition, I'll invite the wizard elders of the 11 main villages, including the Shibai village, to come and observe the ceremony after 81 days. To celebrate your burning lamp ceremony." Zi Ming's eyebrows were filled with joy. He bowed and said, "Thank you very much, Elder Wu. Bless you. You've been so thoughtful since you were young. You've worked so hard for this. I also hope you can understand the magic of the soul-falling lamp and restore the prosperity of the descendants of the Huda god in the Huda village." "Yes, the boy will definitely rack his brains," Zi Ming replied while lying on the ground. "Go, bring little friend Xiao and the others down. The burning lamp ceremony is not only a celebration of Hutu's stronghold, but also a rare grand event in Meng Mountains. Besides, this grand event will definitely be recorded in the Magus Codex. It is the beginning of a new era for Meng Mountains." Grandmaster Wu waved his hand and said, "Yes, the boy knows." Although Zi Ming already knew that this would happen, he still couldn't help but be overjoyed when he heard it from Elder Wu. After all, Meng Mountains was in a critical moment of life and death. With Xiao Hua's seed, Meng Mountains could finally return from death to life. This milestone must be recorded in the Magus Codex and be worshipped by the trillions of people in Meng Mountains, and be revered by future generations. And this milestone was his own burning lamp ceremony. This was definitely a supreme honor, an opportunity that could only be found by chance. Zi Ming stood up and left with Xiao Hua and the others. When there was no one else in the hall, Grandmaster Wu sighed. This sigh carried a sense of helplessness, but at the same time, it also carried a sense of joy after a disaster. Then, Grandmaster Wu muttered to himself doubtfully, "This Xiao Hua is a Confucian cultivator?" Nowadays, Confucian cultivators have long been extinct in Xiaoyu continent. Only a few of them are left in Meng Mountains. Where did he come from? If he is a Confucian cultivator, Then how did he cultivate his demigod body? I've never heard of a Confucian cultivator having the body of a sage. While thinking, Grandmaster Wu raised his head and looked at the door of the hall. G-Man slowly walked in. When she got closer, she bowed and said, Grandmaster Wu, I've ordered all soul warriors to withdraw from Sword Domain. I've also reported this to Grandmaster Wu of Shebi Village. Yes, we've been attacking Sword Domain for so many years. Although we've occupied a lot of territory, it's of no use to solve the crisis of Meng Mountains. We've lost a lot of our people. It's really not worth it. Grandmaster Wu nodded and said, We have no other choice. G-Man also sighed, We can't just do nothing, right? Although attacking Sword Domain is of no use, our people have seen our efforts. There won't be any chaos. When we attacked Sword Domain, the swordsmen of Sword Domain were forced to attack the 3 cultivation kingdoms. Grandmaster Wu said again, The Great War of Dao and Sword has been going on for so many years. Presumably, when the Taoist cultivators weren't on guard, the swordsmen also occupied a lot of territory, right? That should be the case. G-Man nodded, but what exactly does it have to do with us? Since we've withdrawn from Sword Domain, the Great War of Dao and Sword should be over by now. Grandmaster Wu's starry eyes flashed with a strange light. However, the territory occupied by the swordsmen, I'm afraid they won't just give it to cultivators. That's for sure. G-Man said with a smile, Humans are insatiable. They want more after getting it. Although Meng Mountains is no longer a threat to them and they won't lose Sword Domain, do you think the swordsmen will give up what they got? I don't think it's possible. There's no need to talk about the matters of outsiders. Grandmaster Wu waved his hand and asked again, This time, our Huda stockade was in danger. I didn't expect the demon dwellers to spend so much effort. Not only were the descendants of the main stockade possessed, even the descendants of the upper stockade like Jing Apple stockade were possessed. If Zimming didn't find out, I'm afraid that even if we got the seed, it would be a gift to the demon dwellers. Yes, it's all my fault. I'm willing to take responsibility. G-Man bit her lips and didn't refute. There's no need to talk about taking responsibility now. Grandmaster Wu waved his hand. Meng Mountain's disaster hasn't been completely overcome yet, not to mention that the upper stockade's 99 shaman stockades and the lower stockade's 360 shaman stockades haven't started yet. Why are you bringing this up? However, you and Zimming still have to? It's all my fault. G-Man lowered her head and admitted, When I heard that Xian was killed by Zimming, I was immediately enraged. Not only did I capture Zimming, young Master Xiao, and the others, I also wanted to kill them. Especially, Sai, I've insulted the previous G-Man with my words. I'm afraid Zimming can't forgive me for this. Grandmaster Wu shook his head and smiled bitterly. Although he was the stockade master, he could only scratch his head when it came to the family matters of the stockade. Look for an opportunity, take it slow. Grandmaster Wu said again, Zimming isn't an unreasonable person. Although she's greedy for power and wants to break free from your control, she's not disloyal to the Hutsu stockade. G-Man's face was also filled with helplessness. Yes, she still has a rejuvenation pill? Hee hee. Before G-Man could finish speaking, Elder Wu interrupted her. Let's not talk about her. Even I have my own thoughts about this. Actually, if it were you, would you give this rejuvenation pill to her? G-Man didn't say anything and only shook her head slightly. Alright, the selfish desires of humans aren't scary. Without selfish desires, one would be a great deity. We don't have to worry about our own selfish desires, and we don't have to worry about the selfish desires of others. Under the protection of the great deity, all selfish desires will be used by the great deity and become the driving force for the growth of Meng Mountains. Grandmaster Wu waved his hand. If it weren't for Zimming's selfish desires, how could Zimming know Xiaohua? Without Xiaohua, how could Meng Mountains get out of this predicament? Yes, you're right, Grandmaster Wu. G-Man nodded respectfully. Go and make the arrangements. In 81 days, the burning lamp ceremony will be held in the Huda Hall. My Huda you, me, and Zimming will all be recorded in the Magus Codex, and become the most important stroke in the Magus Codex, to be worshipped by the future generations. Yes, I understand. G-Man bowed respectfully, then slowly left the hall. While Grandmaster Wu of the Hutus Decade and G-Man were discussing how to record their names in the Magus Codex for the future generations to worship, far away, between the icebergs that bordered the Huan country and the Shi country, on top of the Green Lake, there were also a few sword cultivators discussing how to record their names in the history. Lake Chui was still Lake Chui, and the tranquil lake water was still as calm as ever, as if it was a huge piece of jade. However, at this moment, standing on top of Lake Chui was no longer LV Ruochang and the other sword cultivators, nor were they those weapon cultivators or beast cultivators. Instead, it was a dozen old men dressed in sword armor. These old men just stood quietly in midair, and each of them had a faint sword glow flashing around their bodies. These sword glows were of different colors, and they came from the top of the old men's heads. Some of them flowed down like ripples, spreading to the bottom of their feet in an instant, then turning around and rushing up to the top of their heads again. Some of them were thin serpents that came from the top of their heads, spiraling down around the old men's bodies. When they reached the bottom of their feet, they turned around in a strange manner, not stopping at all as they rushed up to the top of their heads again. Some of them gushed out like fountains, like waterfalls falling down on their bodies. When their bodies were full, these waterfalls gushed out from the bottom of their feet and rushed up to the top of their heads again. However, no matter what color these sword glows came from, after rushing up to the top of their heads, they all disappeared into the top of the old men's heads. As the sword glows disappeared, the old men's bodies trembled slightly, and a faintly discernible huge sword flashed out from their bodies. Rays of sword energy that seemed to be able to split open the blue sky rushed out, and then strangely disappeared in midair. Wang, suddenly, an ear-piercing sword cry came from outside of Lake Chui. Immediately, all of the sword lights above Lake Chui brightened. However, these sword lights disappeared in a flash. Even though the calm Lake Chui had tens of thousands of deep water marks, the entire Lake Chui was in a state of chaos. However, the sword lights around the 10 old men had disappeared. They were no different from the old men of the secular world. When the old men looked at the only opening in Lake Chui, they saw a rainbow of sword glows piercing through the hurricane and into the sky above Lake Chui. When the sword glows slowly disappeared, a slender, huge sword was revealed. Before anyone could take a closer look, the huge sword trembled rapidly, and a tall and thin old man appeared from the huge sword. Chapter 29-28. The old man's face was long and narrow, and his arched eyebrows were stuck to the corners of his eyes. He looked like he was in dire straits, but at this moment, there was a trace of a smile on the old man's face, and his arched eyebrows were slightly trembling. The old man appeared to the left of a red-faced old man. If Xiao Hua was here, he would definitely recognize him. This was the third-grade swordsman he met after saving Xiao Mao from the Two Springs Mountain. Moreover, it was this person who issued the Sword Master command at the Sword Tomb and ordered the swordsmen of the Huan country to stop Xiao Hua's group. He was the Sword Master of the Void Heaven Sword School, Chong Taishu. Chong Taishu saw the old man's happy expression and the corners of his mouth curled up. He said, "Sword Master Ruo, is the Supreme Harmony Azure Light Sword a success?" This so-called Sword Master Ruo was the Sword Master of the Skyscraping Sword School, Ruo Tian. When Ruo Tian heard Chong Taishu's words, he swept his gaze across the crowd and met the gazes directed at him. He extended his hand, and a thread of fire suddenly appeared in his empty hand. This thread of fire flickered rapidly in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, a slender longsword with endless fire runes on it appeared in Ruo Tian's hand. Following the appearance of this sword, an indescribable heat covered the sky above Lake Chui and enveloped all the old men. "Haha, take a look at my Supreme Harmony Azure Light Sword." Chong Taishu laughed heartily and raised his hand as well. A wisp of watery light appeared in his empty hand. Then, boundless blue waves rippled out from the watery light. Like a whirlwind, they rushed towards the incoming heat. At the same time, a blue flying sword appeared in his hand. This flying sword, was the one Xiao Hua saw in the Yinyang Spring Mountain. Not bad, not bad. Then I'll let all the sword masters see my supreme harmony azure light sword. Cheng Minghua from the Clear Sword sect laughed when he saw this. He waved his hand and something that looked like a withered branch flew out from his hand. Then, a cyan sword light surged out from the branch. The withered branch glowed with a green light and sprouts grew out from it. When the sprouts were as long as a thumb, all the sprouts and withered branches exploded. A cyan sword appeared in Cheng Minghua's hand. Of course, a dense sword chi surged out from his body and rushed into the air. Hum 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 hum. Immediately after, two intense sword cries resounded. A stone pillar-like flying sword appeared in the hands of the sword master of the Black Phoenix Sword sect, Qilian Dai. The thick stone pillar in the hands of the old woman was particularly dazzling. Moreover, the stone pillar-like flying sword was overflowing with a kind of green light. This sword was the profound cyan light sword. The last sword hum naturally came from the Tai Azure light sword. This was the flying sword that Xiao Hua first saw in the Chicken Crow Mountain. Now, it was in the hands of the scarlet-faced sword master of the High Wind Sword sect, Swimming's hand. Hum hum. 5 cyan light swords appeared. 5 different types of sword chi floated in the air above Lake Chui, causing the wind and clouds in the sky to change. Even the sword intent hidden in the bodies of the 10 third-grade sword transformation elders was activated. Sword cries came out from the bodies of these elders. One after another, the cries didn't stop. After the time it took to eat half a meal, the 5 types of sword chi finally converged into the 5 cyan light swords. The wind and clouds in the sky also gradually dissipated. The sword cries above Lake Chui also slowly subsided. Cheng Minghua withdrew his hand and the Tai Azure light sword entered his arm. Looking at the Tai Azure light sword in Ruo Tian's hand, he couldn't help but sigh. These 5 cyan light swords cost the cultivators of my sword domain a lot of effort, not to mention the time it took. Even if I had the confidence to forge these 5 cyan light swords, from the initial Tai Azure light sword to the final Tai Azure light sword, it took more than 10 years of effort. There were many dangers in the process. Several cyan light swords encountered obstacles. If it wasn't for the protection of my sword domain ancestors, these cyan light swords would have failed on the verge of success. Aye, that's right. Ruo Tian, who was the last to arrive, waved his hand. The fiery flying sword emitted a fiery cyan light. Ruo Tian looked at the glaring cyan light and sighed. Innate metal chi and other items can be considered easy. But this innate true fire is extremely rare in my cold sword domain. If someone didn't know, even if you beat this old man to death, this old man wouldn't believe that this innate item was in the extreme north of my sword domain. The sword domain is bitterly cold. This cold chi must have forced the true fire to gather somewhere. Moreover, this true fire is definitely stronger than the true fire of the 3 kingdoms. But the sword domain is so vast, who knows where this true fire is gathered? Chong Taishu nodded. Miss Jiuxia's ability is definitely not something we can compare to. Not only that. Rutian nodded. This Ruo prostrates himself in admiration of Miss Jiuxia. That day, when this Ruo began to forge the Tai Azure light sword, she already said that although this Tai Azure light sword was the easiest to forge, she didn't even need to go there to know that the innate true fire of my sword domain has a cold nature. It's not suitable for the refinement of the Tai Azure light sword. I'm afraid that the refinement will succeed in the end. And as this Ruo Tian thought, what's so special about these innate items? But who would have thought that her guess was right? Although this Ruo Tian suffered the most during the refinement, this Ruo Tian can pat his chest and say that this Ruo Tian also obtained the most benefits. Hearing this, a trace of jealousy flashed across the eyes of Soaring Windsword Sex Swimming, and he said self-deprecatingly, "That's right, this Swatian wanted to refine the Tai Azure light sword at all times. Unfortunately, the innate Golden Mother is at Chicken Crow Mountain, which is the territory of the 7 Skills sect. In order to not attract the attention of the Dao sect's cultivators, this Swatian could only do it secretly. Although the battle at Chicken Crow Mountain caused a huge commotion and the Dao sect's phoenix child rose out of nowhere, Fortunately, this item was successfully refined at the beginning of the battle. This Swation can be considered to have accomplished his mission. Black Phoenix Sword Sect's beautiful butterfly also sighed. That's right. Who asked the Dao Sect's territory to be so vast? The innate true earth is also near Clear Cave. What scared this old woman the most was that the Zhao family of Clear Cave actually discovered the secret of the Tai Azure Light Sword. In order to minimize the impact, this old woman had no choice but to completely exterminate the Zhao family. Fortunately, those golden core children in the discussion hall who were like pigs and beasts didn't notice too much. Moreover, Ruo Chang's subsequent concealment eliminated their suspicions. If they were to discover that we were laying down the Heaven 1 Azure Light Sword formation, I'm afraid this sword formation would be unable to be completed. Hearing this, Void Heaven Sword Sect's Chong Taishu also nodded. Sword Master Beautiful Butterfly is right. Our sword domain's Heaven 1 Azure Light Sword formation hasn't been completed for who knows how many years. The Tai Azure Light, 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 and Tai Azure Light are extremely rare. Even with the power of our sword domain, it is difficult to find all of them. This time, in the Dao Sword War, it was all thanks to Lady Jioxia's strength that we were able to find traces of the 5 Azure Lights and began to refine the Azure Light Sword. That's not all. Beautiful Butterfly continued, don't be fooled by Ruo Chang's calm command. In the first stage, she exterminated almost all of the Golden Core cultivators. However, this was all part of Lady Jioxia's plan. Ruo Chang only took advantage of her familiarity with Lady Jioxia, which was why she was able to make such outstanding contributions in the Dao Sword War. Fortunately, Lady Jioxia ended up in our sword domain. If she had appeared in the Cultivation 3 Kingdoms, I wouldn't dare to imagine the predicament our sword domain would be in and the outcome of this Dao Sword War. Chong Taishu said with great joy. Sword Master Chong. The others didn't speak and only listened to the 5 sword masters in charge of the Azure Light Sword. At this time, Sword Master Ouyang Mingxiu of the Xian Sword Sect said, Lady Jioxia promised our sword domain 2 important things. One was to repel the soul cultivators who invaded our sword domain, and the other was to help our sword domain obtain victory in the Dao Sword War. Now, it seems that the second task is more than half complete. Our Sword Dao Sword War is already in our grasp. But what about the first task? There seems to be no sign of it. Sword Master Ouyang, Chong Taishu said with a smile, actually, these 2 tasks are one. This Chong clearly remembers that when we went to Miss Jioxia's place that day, she agreed to help us resolve the crisis of soul cultivators in our sword domain even though she herself didn't know how to do it. Was this the Dao Sword War? It didn't erupt that day, but we felt that it would erupt sooner or later, so we used these 2 tasks as bargaining chips to negotiate with Lady Jioxia. Lady Jioxia agreed to these 2 tasks, but later on, I thought about it carefully. We wanted to take advantage of Lady Jioxia, but in the end, we still fell into her trap. Hearing this, not only Ouyang Mingxiu, but the other nearly 10 third-grade swordmasters also showed a look of realization. Yes, although Chong Taishu didn't say much, the fact was already in front of everyone. Now that Tian had returned with the refined Supreme Harmony Cyan Light Sword, the sword cultivators only needed to set up the Tianyi Cyan Light Sword formation according to Jioxia's previous plan, and the Dao Sword War would end. But the swordsmen had invaded a lot of territory in the country of Shi and the country of Lian, so naturally, they couldn't return it to the Taoism sect. If the swordsmen of the sword domain moved to the country of Shi and then to the country of Lian, then the battle between the swordsmen and the soul cultivators would end, right? Even if the sword domain gave up to the soul cultivators, the swordsmen would be safe. What Lady Jioxia promised was also done. Alas, we are too weak to scheme against Lady Jioxia. Cheng Minghua sighed again and said, instead of thinking about this, it's better to think about how to set up the Tianyi Cyan Light Sword formation outside the Sky Patrol City and take it down. It's not difficult to set up a sword formation outside the Sky Patrol City. Chong Taishu said with a smile, at the beginning of the war, we deliberately diverted our attention from the Sky Patrol City to prevent the Taoism sect cultivators from noticing the Sky Patrol City. To tell you the truth, Lady Jioxia told me to quietly set up a formation within 100 miles of the Sky Patrol City. Oh, I remember that before Qin Jian of the Void Heavensword School fell, I transformed into a human form and passed by the Sky Patrol City. I also specifically warned them not to appear near the Sky Patrol City, so as not to arouse the suspicion of the cultivators. I didn't want them to find traces of my formation. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.